I woke up and found myself in a small, run-down room, not my old rental apartment. There was a wooden table with tea sets and strange writing on yellowed parchment. Then a flood of memories hit me hard, and my head felt like it was splitting open. When the pain faded, I understood everything. I had transmigrated into a world called the Magic Continent, into the body of a 16-year-old baron named Chris Jordan. He had come to his territory, Hope Town, after his coming-of-age ceremony 6 months ago. A system had activated in my head. It gave me a task. The peanut fields in my territory were in trouble, and if I didn't fix it soon, the harvest would drop. The reward was Battle Aura Awakening, something I desperately needed. In this world, talented kids awaken Battle Aura by age 12 or 15 and become knights. Chris was already 16 and a half with no awakening, so he was considered hopeless. But now, with this system, I had a chance. My administrator, Randall, came in to report on his work. He mentioned the peanut fields were turning yellow and blamed the serfs for being lazy. He had already punished them. I told him not to jump to conclusions and decided to go see for myself. I left the castle with Randall and my chief knight, Jonathan, a muscular red-haired man at the 3rd knight rank, along with 4 other first-rank knights. I rode the only horse in the whole town while they walked beside me. Along the way, I saw thin, hungry-looking serfs heading to the fields. They all dropped to their knees when they saw me. To them, I was their absolute ruler. We reached the terraced peanut fields, about 13 or 14 acres, and more than half the plants had turned yellow. An old serf named Old John ran out from a shabby straw hut nearby. He was skinny, dressed in rags, and covered in whip marks. He knelt before me, trembling with fear. Randall kicked him and called him a lazy fool, but Old John swore he watered the fields every week without fail. I stopped Randall, got off my horse, and picked a yellowed peanut leaf to examine it. Randall fussed that a nobleman shouldn't do such things with his own hands, but I ignored him. Coming from the modern world, I didn't care about those rules. I was pretty sure the peanuts were lacking nitrogen fertilizer. So I asked Old John when he last fertilized the soil. He looked confused and had no idea what fertilizer even was. Neither did Randall or anyone else. I rubbed my forehead and asked him how he normally took care of the peanuts. Old John told me he weeded and picked bugs 3 times a day without fail. So the problem wasn't laziness. This world just didn't have the concept of fertilizer. Crops grew however they grew, and people left it up to fate. I ordered Randall to have all the serfs stop their regular work. I told them to dig mud from the pond and mix it with wood ash from their cooking fires, then bury the mixture into the peanut fields. Randall and the knights spread the word across Hope Town. Soon about 140 workers were digging pond mud, while the rest gathered dry wood to burn into ash. By the end of the morning, all 13+ acres of peanut fields had been fertilized. When the work was done, I told Randall to pay each serf 20 copper coins. He couldn't believe it. In his mind, serfs working for their lord was just how things were supposed to be. But I shut him down. Where I came from, people should be paid for their labor. Besides, my serfs were skin and bones. How could I expect them to work hard if they were starving? When the serfs heard about the payment, they were overjoyed and praised me with all their hearts. Right then, the system chimed in my head. Task complete. The reward was Battle Aura Awakening. A warm current flowed through my body, and when I held out my hand, a silver-white swirl of energy appeared on my palm. I was now a trainee knight. With some practice, I could become a real first-rank knight. Jonathan noticed immediately. As a 3rd-rank knight, he could sense Battle Aura. He was shocked and thrilled. A lord with Battle Aura meant real potential, the chance to earn military achievements, raise our noble rank, and expand our territory. For everyone under me, it meant hope for a better future. We headed back to the castle. My maid, Ruth Sandy, greeted me with lunch, a steak with silver cutlery. Even a poor countryside noble still ate with silver. I wasn't used to steak, but there wasn't much choice. After eating, I went to take a nap, deciding to accept this new life since there was no going back. I was woken by urgent knocking. Ruth told me that Jonathan had reported Baron Anthony Hughes was causing trouble on my land again. Anthony was my neighbor. The 2 territories had been clashing for a while. He was a first-rank knight, and the old Chris had been just an ordinary person, so Anthony always had the upper hand. But things were different now. I clenched my fist, headed outside, mounted my horse, and told Jonathan to lead the way as fast as he could. On the way there, Jonathan filled me in on what happened. Between my territory and Baron Anthony's, there are a few poplar trees marking the border. One of my serfs had been relieving himself under a tree, and Anthony caught him. Anthony claimed the serf had crossed into his land and wanted to execute him. The thing is, only a lord has the right to punish his own serfs. Another noble killing someone else's serf is considered a direct insult. So this wasn't really about a serf crossing a line. Anthony was using it as an excuse to humiliate me. When I arrived at the eastern edge of my territory, a crowd had gathered. Anthony was there, a guy in his 20s with brown hair and gray-brown eyes, wearing fancy clothes. One of my serfs was hanging from a tree beside him, covered in whip marks and barely groaning. I got off my horse and demanded to know what he was doing. He laughed and said my serf had trespassed, so he had the right to kill him. The serf weakly protested, and Anthony slapped him across the face, claiming 1 foot had crossed the border. This guy was clearly here just to pick a fight. The old Chris would have swallowed this insult. But I'm not that person. Back in my previous life, I was known for being a fierce fighter in school. I never backed down from anyone, win or lose. I shouted at Anthony to release the serf immediately. He was stunned. So was Jonathan. The old Chris had never stood up like this before. Anthony tossed some silver coins at my feet and said he was buying the serf's life. I refused and roared at him again to let the man go. When he mocked me, I ordered Jonathan and the knights to draw their swords. Both sides were evenly matched. Each had 1 third-rank knight and 4 first-rank knights. But Anthony himself was a first-rank knight, which gave his side the edge. I didn't care. I charged straight at Anthony. Jonathan eagerly took on the enemy's third-rank knight. He'd been holding back his frustration for half a year. Anthony released his battle aura and met my charge. Our fists collided, and I was knocked back 4 or 5 steps while he only moved 2 or 3. He mocked me, saying a trainee knight was nothing to him, and grabbed a tree branch as a weapon. So I fought dirty. I sprinted at him, kicked sand into his eyes, and tackled him to the ground. I scratched him with my nails, bit him with my teeth. His face and body were soon covered in wounds. When he punched me, I bit down on his ear until blood ran between my teeth, then clawed 5 bloody streaks across his face. Everyone froze. The watching serfs, even the fighting knights on both sides, stopped to stare at my wild fighting style. Anthony screamed for help. His knight suggested to Jonathan that they pull us apart before both lords got seriously hurt. Jonathan agreed. They separated us. Anthony's face was torn up, his ear was bleeding, and his clothes were a mess. He pointed at me, shaking with rage, and called me a madman unfit to be a noble. My own face was bruised black and blue, but I spat out the blood in my mouth and told him that he didn't get to decide who deserved to be a noble. I warned him that next time would be worse. Anthony was so angry he said, "You," 3 times, and then fainted on the spot. I told his knights to take him and get out, and that if he ever came to my territory looking for trouble again, he'd regret it even more. His knights carried him away without a word. I ordered my people to cut down the poor serf hanging from the tree. No matter what, he was just an innocent man caught up in a conflict between 2 lords. Jonathan cut the serf down from the tree right away. The man dropped to his knees and thanked me. His name was Dean. I told him to take the silver coins Anthony had thrown on the ground as compensation and to use them to recover, because I still needed him to work. After I rode off, the watching serfs praised me. Having a lord who would stand up for them gave them hope. Back at the castle, Ruth gasped when she saw my bruised face. I told her not to worry. The other guy looked way worse. Anthony probably wouldn't wake up for a while, and it would take him at least 10 days to 2 weeks to recover. Ruth cleaned my wounds with medicinal wine while I sat back and thought things over. My dirty fighting had worked this time, but the gap in real strength was still there. Once Anthony healed, he might come for revenge. I needed to reach first-rank knight as soon as possible. Then the system chimed again with a new task. An unexpected guest had arrived in my territory, and I should treat them well for a surprising reward. The details were vague. It didn't say whether the guest was a person or some kind of creature. I called Jonathan over and told him to take 2 knights and patrol the territory, reporting anything unusual immediately. By evening, there was still no word. After dinner, I went to my study and tried to brainstorm business ideas using knowledge from my previous life. I needed money badly. I was a broke lord with nothing. But everything I thought of either required materials I didn't have or knowledge I lacked. I stayed up late without coming up with anything useful. When I was about to head to bed, I suddenly noticed a figure in a gray robe standing at my door. It startled me, and I stumbled backward, knocking over a chair. The outfit was clearly that of a mage. She pulled down her hood and introduced herself as Tina, a mage. She was around 18 or 19, with snow-white skin, wavy brownish-gold hair, big eyes, and long eyelashes. She sat down casually and told me she had been injured and needed a place to recover for about 3 months. She was asking to stay in my castle. I understood. She wanted free room and board. Most mages lived on their own since nobles didn't like them much due to their unusual research. It was rare for one to come asking a noble for help. I told her nothing was free and asked what I'd get in return. She leaned in close and said she could sense magic power inside me. She offered to teach me magic, which would make me a magic warrior, someone who uses both battle aura and magic. Magic warriors are the strongest at the same rank, but training in both means you probably won't reach the highest levels. I turned her down. Becoming a magic warrior didn't interest me. Then she tossed a ring onto the table, a silver ring with a tiny yellow gem. It was a spatial ring, a magic item with 100 cubic units of storage space inside, opened and closed with a bit of battle aura. I put it on and tested it. 10 compartments appeared in my mind. It was genuinely useful and would make things a lot more convenient. I accepted the deal and put the ring on. Then I asked her why she had chosen to come to me specifically. Tina told me why she chose me. She had arrived in my territory that same day and watched everything. How I didn't punish old John, but instead solved the peanut field problem, how I fought Anthony to protect my serf, and how I gave Dean the silver coins. She said out of the hundreds of nobles she'd met, I was the only one who treated serfs like actual people. I realized that if I had arrived, even one day later, the original Chris would have driven her away, because he was just like every other noble. Then something alarming happened. Tina suddenly grabbed my teacup and sniffed it. She told me it had been poisoned with a magical toxin, greenscale snake venom mixed with blue-eyed lizard saliva. Colorless, odorless, and instantly lethal. That must be how the original Chris died, which gave me the chance to take over his body. I searched through all of Chris's memories, but couldn't figure out who did it. Anthony seemed like the obvious suspect, but it didn't make sense. He actually benefited from having a weak neighbor to bully. Tina said the poison was simple enough for a first-rank mage, but sneaking it into my cup unnoticed would require at least a third-rank mage. That meant someone powerful was hiding in the shadows, watching me. It was a chilling thought. I asked Tina her rank, but she just smiled and said it was a secret. I set her up in the empty room next to mine. Having a mage sleeping right beside me was good protection in case the hidden enemy came back. It was a win-win arrangement. That night, lying in bed, I quietly circulated the battle aura inside my body. After several cycles, I heard a cracking sound deep within me, and my aura surged dramatically. I had broken through to first-rank knight in just one day since awakening. That was unheard of on this continent. My skin turned red and hot, and I could feel my body getting much stronger, maybe 3 times what it was before. Then I felt something cool flowing through me, calming the heat. It wasn't battle aura, it was magic power, the same energy Tina had mentioned. I held out both hands. Silver-white aura swirled in my right palm, and clear, water-like magic energy floated in my left. The battle aura breakthrough had triggered my magic to awaken too. I was now a first-rank magic warrior, both knight and mage. The system upgraded itself to version 2.0 and unlocked a reputation feature. I could earn reputation points by expanding territory, defeating enemies, and earning my people's love. With enough reputation, I could level up directly. This changed everything. Normally, a magic warrior's progress is slow because you're splitting your training between 2 disciplines. But with the system, I could bypass that limitation entirely. Someday, I might even become the first 9th-rank magic warrior in history. I fell asleep dreaming about that. The next morning, Ruth helped me get ready, and I sat down for breakfast, milk and white bread with silver cutlery. The bread was dry and hard, like stale steamed buns. The milk was straight from the cow, greasy and fishy tasting, nothing like the processed milk from my old world. Both were considered luxuries here, but for someone from the 21st century, they were barely edible. Then I remembered, in my previous life, I was a pastry chef who ran a dessert shop. I could make cream and put it in the bread to make it taste much better. Before I could start on that idea, I heard a commotion outside. I was interrupted by my butler, Robert, dragging in a maid named Kalina. Her hair was messy, her face had a red slap mark, and she was kneeling on the ground in tears. Robert told me she had stolen 30 silver coins. I lifted her chin and asked why. She said it was to pay for her sick brother's treatment. I remembered from the old Chris's memories that she had once asked for an advance on her salary for this exact reason, and the previous Chris had refused her. Robert said that by noble law, I should hang her as an example. But I couldn't do that over some stolen money. She was a hard worker who never complained about the toughest chores. Killing her would be a loss for me too. So I told her to keep the money for her brother's treatment, but it would be deducted from her future pay. She'd also get 20 lashes as punishment for the theft. She thanked me over and over. Then golden text appeared before my eyes. Reputation from Kalina, +5. So that's how the reputation system worked. I tested it further by raising Robert's monthly salary from 8 to 10 silver coins, and got 2 more points from him. But Robert reminded me of a problem. After lending Kalina the money, I only had enough funds and food to last 1 month. The crops wouldn't be ready for 3 months. I was broke. Other transmigrators end up as wealthy young masters, and here I was, a poor baron whose only income came from grain taxes that barely covered daily expenses. I racked my brain trying to think of a business idea, but nothing came to me. In my previous life, I was just a pastry chef running a dessert shop, not some business genius. I decided to deal with the most urgent thing first, making my food edible. I called the cook, Mrs. Ellen, and asked her for 5 eggs, a small bowl of sugar, and a cup of milk. Making basic cream was something I could do in my sleep. I separated the egg whites into a bowl, stirred them with a fork until they foamed, then added milk and a spoonful of sugar and kept stirring. After a few rounds, the liquid thickened into a pale yellow cream. I tasted it, sweet, rich, and full of milky flavor. I spread a big scoop on bread, sandwiched it, and took a bite. It was delicious. I ate until I was full and still had half a bowl left. Then an idea hit me. What if sharing this cream with my servants earned me reputation points? I had everyone in the castle come over, 5 servants lined up. Ruth was the first to try it. Her eyes lit up, and she said it was amazing. 2 reputation points from Ruth. Then the others rushed in to taste it, fighting over the bowl. Each one gave me 2 points. In total, I earned 10 reputation points just from that one bowl of cream. I checked my status. 17 reputation points out of 2,000 needed to reach 2nd rank magic warrior. At this rate, it might take less than a month to level up. One of the maids then asked me what this delicious stuff was called. I told them it was called cream. Ruth licked her lips and said it was the most delicious thing she'd ever eaten. She bet even city nobles had never tasted anything like it. That comment gave me an idea. I could sell cream to wealthy nobles. They'd never seen anything like it in this world, so they'd love it. I could solve my money problem, earn reputation points, and grow stronger all at once. I rushed to my bedroom and pulled out a small locked wooden chest from under the bed. Inside was my entire fortune, 30 silver coins. I packed them all into a small cloth bag and headed out, telling Mrs. Ellen not to make me lunch. I ordered Jonathan to leave one night to guard the castle and bring the other 3 with me to Mott City, the nearest town where many nobles lived. It was only a few dozen miles away, and with the knights running alongside my horse, we got there in about 2 hours. Mott City had tall walls dozens of meters high and busy streets full of vendors. The old Chris had lived here for 15 years before getting his baron title, so I knew the place well from his memories. I rented a shop in a decent location for 5 silver coins, then gave each knight 3 silver coins to go buy supplies: milk, eggs, sugar, wooden basins, spoons, and paper bowls. They came back with everything: 20 pounds of eggs, 4 big cups of milk, 2 pounds of sugar, and all the tools. I put the knights to work cracking eggs, separating the whites, and stirring them in the basins. Even Jonathan got a basin and spoon. Their stamina was impressive. The egg whites foamed up in minutes. I had them add milk and sugar in stages and keep stirring. About 15 minutes later, the mixture turned into smooth, white cream. The quality was even better than what I'd made at the castle because the milk was higher grade. I calculated the costs. 15 silver coins total for about 80 servings, so roughly 19 copper coins per serving. Selling at 50 copper coins each seemed fair. I had the knights scoop the cream into paper bowls and set up a table outside the shop. Jonathan asked what we were selling. I told him to call it snow cake. Cream sounded too plain, and snow cake had a nicer ring to it, white like snowflakes. I waited eagerly, but nobody stopped to ask about it. I figured we needed to advertise, so I told Jonathan to shout and attract customers. He was embarrassed, but I told him if we didn't sell anything, I'd go bankrupt and he wouldn't get paid next month. So there he was, a huge, muscular man nearly 2 meters tall, awkwardly calling out in a shy voice, "Essence snow cake. Sweet, sweet snow cake." It looked so ridiculous that people couldn't help but notice. Sure enough, a young man stopped at our stall and asked how much. I told him 50 copper coins per bowl. The young man said 50 copper coins was too expensive and walked away. I couldn't believe it. If he'd just tasted it, he'd know it was worth every coin. I thought about offering free samples like stores did in my old world, but cream isn't something you can stick on a toothpick. So I started dropping the price. 40 copper coins, nobody came. 30, still nothing. 20, not a single buyer. Jonathan happily ate a whole bowl and licked the paper clean, then asked me why nobody was buying something so delicious. I had no answer. The cream was starting to melt, so I gave each knight a bowl to avoid wasting it. Finally, I dropped the price to 10 copper coins, even though that meant selling at a loss. I just wanted to recover some of my money. My very first business venture in this world was turning into a complete disaster. Then, a man stopped by our stall. He turned out to be Baron Raymond, a local nobleman who worked as a city official. He bought one bowl for 10 copper coins. My knights and I were so excited over that single sale that the poor man looked confused. What I didn't know at the time was that Raymond had a 10-year-old daughter named Sherry who had stopped eating for the past 2 years. She was dangerously thin, skin and bones. No doctor or even a mage could figure out what was wrong. Raymond had actually bought the snow cake on a whim. It reminded him of how his daughter used to beg him for sweets when she was little. He left the snow cake on the dining table and went to his study. While nobody was in the room, little Sherry wandered in and noticed the white stuff. She loved snow and thought it looked like it. She grabbed a handful and ate it. Her eyes lit up. She ate a second bite, then a third, and finished the entire bowl. When Raymond came back and saw the empty bowl, he could barely believe it. He found his daughter by the sink washing her sticky hands. She had cream on her lips. She looked up at him and said, "Daddy, it's yummy. I want more." Raymond burst into tears. His daughter was finally eating again. He grabbed a fistful of silver coins from his bedroom, gathered every servant in the house, over 20 people, and marched out the door to find my stall. Just when I'd almost given up, the system notified me. 10 reputation points from Sherry, 10 from Raymond. I jumped up and told the knights to get ready. Business was coming. A huge crowd appeared, over 100 people, led by Raymond with more than 20 servants behind him, plus a mob of curious onlookers who'd followed along. Raymond marched up and said he'd buy every bowl I had. But I told him the price was now 2 silver coins per bowl, not 10 copper. He got angry and accused me of price gouging. I explained that 10 copper was a first customer trial price, and with my secret family recipe, the real cost was already 1 silver coin. 2 silver was actually a fair deal. He agreed, but then I added another rule: 1 bowl per person, no bulk buying. He thought I was crazy for turning away money. I told him the snow cake melts within a day and he'd just be wasting it. The real reason, of course, was that if he bought everything, nobody else could taste it and give me reputation points. Raymond settled for 5 bowls, paid 10 silver coins, and asked me to reserve 1 for his daughter tomorrow. After he left, the crowd went wild. People started asking whether the snow cake was really that good, especially since Raymond's daughter, who supposedly refused to eat anything, apparently loved it. They rushed the stall. The snow cake sold out in less than 30 minutes. 75 bowls at 2 silver coins each, 150 silver coins total. My cost had been only 15 silver coins, 10 times the profit. Better yet, I earned 75 reputation points from those customers. Those strangers only gave me 1 point each instead of 2 like my servants. Combined with what I already had, I passed the 100-point mark. I could feel my body heat up as my battle aura surged and grew denser. I checked my system panel, 112 reputation out of 2,000. The 3-day task to earn 100 reputation was already complete. The reward was an epic magic material called a dragon eye stone. I went inside the shop alone, made sure nobody could see, and claimed the reward. A fist-sized black vortex with purple lightning appeared in the air, and a walnut-sized stone dropped out. It was white with red lines running through it, and a black circle on one side. It really did look like an eyeball. I had no idea what it was for, so I stored it in my spatial ring to ask Tina about later. I gave each knight 2 silver coins as a bonus, which earned me 8 more reputation points. Jonathan handed me the money bag, 150 silver coins, heavy and clinking. My first day in business had gone from total failure to a massive success. I handed out the bonus coins, locked up the shop, and we headed home. It was around 4 in the afternoon, and we'd barely make it back before dark. Riding along on my horse, I started planning my next steps. First, personal strength was critical. This world had magical beasts and bandits everywhere. My battle aura was tied to the system's reputation, and I'd noticed that my own people gave me 2 points each, while outsiders only gave 1. So keeping my people happy was key. Second, I needed new products. Cream was great, but people would get tired of something so sweet after a while. I decided to develop fruit jam next, easy for a pastry chef like me. Then I'd plant fruit trees on my land, creating a full production chain from growing to processing. That would mean jobs for my people, better income, better lives, and more reputation for me. 2 birds with 1 stone. While I was thinking, I pulled out the dragon eye stone and turned it over in my hands, wondering what it was for. Then Jonathan's voice cut through, sharp and serious. "My lord, be careful." Up ahead on a small hill stood a figure wrapped in a black robe, dark mist swirling around him. Jonathan said it was a dark mage. That was bad news. Regular mages were mostly harmless, just a bit eccentric. But dark mages were unpredictable killers. One had even wiped out an entire city in history. The dark mage let out a creepy laugh and said he'd been searching for something for years and had finally found it. He was staring right at the dragon eye stone in my hand. Then he looked at my face and froze. He recognized me as the Baron of Hope Town and couldn't understand how I was still alive after drinking the magical poison he'd prepared. So this was the one who killed the original Chris. Old grudge and new grudge, all in one place. Jonathan drew his sword, and the knights surrounded me. But the dark mage, Blake, summoned 4 monsters from clouds of black smoke. A 2-headed purple snake as thick as a man's waist and over 15 meters long, a creature with an eagle's head, lion's body, and black wings, a wolf-headed humanoid carrying a spiked club, and a massive boar covered in fish scales. All 4 had glowing red eyes. Jonathan took on the 2-headed snake and told the other 3 knights to handle the rest. I dismounted, ready to fight too. I was a first-rank magic warrior now. The battle erupted. Jonathan had a tough time with the snake. His sword just sparked off its hard scales, and its tail sent him flying. The other knights were barely holding their own against the remaining monsters. Then Blake made his move. A black whirlwind carried him straight toward me. Jonathan leaped up to intercept, but Blake pulled out a half-meter wand and conjured a black shield that stopped Jonathan's sword cold. Blake fired a dark magic ball at Jonathan, who barely dodged it, only to have the 2-headed snake lunge at him from behind. Just when things looked desperate, a girl's voice rang out. Green vines as thick as arms shot out and wrapped around the 2-headed snake, pinning its heads back. I looked over and saw a girl in a gray mage's robe standing a few dozen meters away. The girl was a mage, maybe 15 or 16, with a bit of baby fat on her face and a walnutwood wand. She had a badge with 2 leaves on her chest, a second-rank mage. She was incredibly powerful. She scattered seeds on the ground, made them grow instantly into thick, thorny vines, and whipped the 2-headed snake until it was full of bloody holes. But Blake pointed his wand at the snake and cast a spell called demonization. The snake's body swelled, its wounds stopped bleeding, and it radiated dark purple mist. Its power surged so much that it could fight both Jonathan and the girl mage at the same time and still have the upper hand. Then Blake turned his cold eyes on me. I could tell. He was looking at me like I was already dead. He flew toward me on a black whirlwind, wand raised, and fired a bolt of black lightning. I dodged sideways just in time. It hit a boulder behind me and shattered it to pieces. As he closed in for another shot, I grabbed his wand and yanked it, then drove my knee into his gut. The wand flew out of his hands, and he crashed to the ground several meters away. I snapped the wand over my knee. He pulled a backup wand from a ring, but I kicked it out of his hand before he could use it, sent it flying over 100 meters away. A mage without a wand is like a snake without fangs. I unleashed everything I had. My battle aura blazed as I pounded him with one punch after another. In less than a minute, his face was a mess, several ribs were broken, and his whole body was falling apart. Jonathan, still fighting the snake, shouted and hurled his sword to me. I caught it midair, flipped it downward, and drove it straight through Blake's chest. Blood splattered hot on my face. His eyes went dull and stayed open. 20 reputation points. The moment Blake died, all 4 monsters screamed and melted into puddles. I dropped to the ground, heart pounding out of my chest. Then I noticed a ring on Blake's finger, silver with a milky white gem. I realized it was another spatial ring, the one he'd pulled his backup wand from. I took it off his hand. The young mage walked over and told me I was impressive. I thanked her for the help and introduced myself. Her name was Linda, a second-rank mage specializing in plant magic. She said hunting down dark mages was every mage's duty, since dark mages had ruined their profession's reputation throughout history. While chatting with Linda, I injected battle aura into Blake's spatial ring. 10 storage compartments appeared in my mind. When I saw what was stored inside, my expression changed. Inside Blake's spatial ring, 6 of the 10 compartments held transparent jars filled with greenish liquid, and floating inside were halves of animal bodies, a horse's torso, a dog's head, all kinds of parts. The horrifying thing was they were still moving. The remaining compartments had clothes, food, magic books, and magical materials. I nearly vomited and ran off to dump it all out. Linda explained that some dark mages practiced splicing magic, stitching 2 different animals together to create monsters. That's where those 4 creatures we fought had come from. After I calmed down, Linda dug through the pile and pulled out 4 gray crystal balls the size of walnuts. She called them soul crystals. They could capture a magical beast's soul and bind it to you through a master-servant contract. You could then store the beast inside the crystal and release it whenever you needed. That's how Blake had summoned his monsters, and why they died when he did. I kept 3 crystals and gave Linda the 4th as thanks for her help. Then I showed her the dragon eye stone and asked what it was. Her eyes went wide. She said it was an extremely rare material needed to craft epic-level magic equipment. I told her I'd found it. I wasn't about to mention the system. Then I had an idea. Since Linda specialized in plant magic, she could make crops grow faster. I offered her a deal. Work on my territory for 6 months, and I'd give her the dragon eye stone as payment. To me, a mage who could speed up plant growth was worth far more than any stone. She agreed immediately. We all walked back to Hopetown together. When Linda saw my land, she said the soil was fertile and she liked it. She tapped her wand and made a few flowers bloom on the spot. I knew I'd made the right call bringing her back. At the castle, the knight on guard duty told me Anthony was at the border again, shouting for me. I couldn't believe that guy had recovered so quickly. Just one day, and he was already back for more. We headed over. Anthony was wrapped in bandages, especially around the ear I'd bitten. He was furious and challenged me to a one-on-one duel. I accepted instantly, which seemed to surprise him. Then I released my silver-white battle aura and told him I was now a first-rank knight too. He and all his men were stunned. It had taken Anthony 4 years to go from trainee to first-rank knight. I'd done it at 16, practically unheard of on the entire continent. Jonathan tossed me his sword. I pointed it at Anthony and told him to come on. He charged with his blade raised, eyes full of killing intent. I blocked his strike. Sparks flew as our swords clashed. The old Chris had received sword training as a child, and I'd inherited those skills through his memories, so I wasn't helpless with a blade. I shoved his sword upward, making him stumble, and kicked him hard in the stomach. He staggered back with blood on his lips. We both released our full battle aura. There we stood in the last light of sunset, glowing like silver beacons, ready to settle this once and for all. Even though I'd just become a first-rank knight, my battle aura was surprisingly on par with Anthony's. I attacked first, gripping my sword with both hands and extending my aura into a glowing blade over 2 meters long. I fought with big, aggressive swings that pushed Anthony back step by step, landing multiple hits. His clothes were torn, and he was bleeding. Then Anthony's third-rank knight warned Jonathan not to celebrate too early. His lord hadn't used a battle skill yet. That worried me, because I hadn't had any chance to learn battle skills since my breakthrough. Anthony roared that I'd forced his hand and unleashed a technique called Green Lotus Sword Art. His aura exploded outward like a blooming lotus, tinged with green. I could feel how dangerous this attack was. If I couldn't counter it, I might die on the spot. In that life-or-death moment, something strange happened. My mind became crystal clear, and all the martial arts movies and shows I'd watched in my previous life replayed in my head. The techniques the characters used became vivid and real. My body moved on its own, leaving afterimages. My aura formed into a dragon that coiled around me. Everyone was stunned. Anthony's bearded knight fell to the ground in shock, muttering that I'd created my own battle skill, something that normally took families hundreds of years to develop. I pushed my left palm forward and shouted, 18 dragon-subduing palms. A silver aura dragon roared toward Anthony. His green lotus shattered on contact, and the dragon crashed through 4 or 5 layers of magical defensive items he was wearing. Necklaces, bracelets, all breaking apart into shields and barriers. Each one only held for a second before shattering. By the time the dragon hit Anthony, it was nearly transparent, but still powerful enough to send him flying, coughing blood, his sword knocked away. Before anyone recovered from their shock, I rushed forward, grabbed Anthony, and held my sword to his neck. He begged me to talk it out. His bearded knight reminded me that noble law forbade killing an innocent noble. I smiled coldly and said I wouldn't kill him, but cutting off a certain part of his body below the belt shouldn't be a problem. Anthony clamped his legs together in terror. In this world, as long as you didn't kill another noble, even maiming them was technically legal. And since Anthony was just a second son with no inheritance rights, his family probably wouldn't bother seeking revenge over something like that. The bearded knight quickly stepped in and asked how much money I wanted. I held up 3 fingers, 3 gold coins, equal to 300 silver. Anthony called me a bandit. I raised it to 5 gold coins. He shut up after that. I gave them half an hour to bring the money, warning that every 10 minutes past the deadline would add 2 more gold coins. Anthony sent his bearded knight running to fetch his money chest from under his bed. I asked Linda to tie Anthony up so I wouldn't have to keep holding a sword to his neck. She pointed her wand and grew vines from the ground that wrapped him up like a bundle. Anthony was shocked to realize I had a mage on my side now. I sat down on a rock and waited. I'd only asked Linda to show off a little. As a first-rank knight, holding a sword all day wouldn't actually tire me. The bearded knight came sprinting back with a black money chest in under 10 minutes. Anthony cursed him for handing it over without thinking, since the key was still in Anthony's pocket. I cut the vines, and Anthony reluctantly opened the chest. Inside were 3 gold coins, some silver, and a bunch of copper, but it wasn't enough. After pulling out the 3 gold coins, he still needed 200 silver to make 5 gold total. He scraped together 195 silver coins, and the copper fell short too. He couldn't even afford his own ransom. I told him to forget the last 5 silver and swept everything into my spatial ring. Then something funny happened. The system showed me 5 reputation points from Anthony. I'd captured the guy, taken nearly all his money, and he was grateful I let the last bit slide. I felt like I'd stumbled onto an exploit for farming reputation. I set him free. His money chest had maybe a couple hundred copper coins left. I almost felt bad, but then again, the old Chris had been squeezed dry by Anthony the exact same way multiple times before. That's partly why I'd been so poor. We headed home. By the time we reached the castle, it was fully dark. Robert and all the servants were waiting anxiously at the gate. I told them that starting next month, everyone's pay would go up by 2 silver coins. They cheered, and I collected 16 reputation points from the 8 of them. With the snow cake business bringing in money, a few extra silver coins meant nothing compared to the reputation I gained. When Robert tried to warn me about spending, I pulled out the heavy money bag and jingled it. He went quiet. To celebrate my promotion to first-rank knight, I told Mrs. Ellen to bring out all the meat in the kitchen. We were having a bonfire barbecue party. Everyone was stunned when they heard I'd reached first rank. Just yesterday, I'd only awakened my aura. Going from trainee to first-rank knight in a single day was something even legendary holy knights couldn't do. The congratulations poured in, along with 10 more reputation points. I had Ruth prepare a room for Linda, then sat in the castle's small courtyard watching everyone bustle around preparing dinner. Mrs. Ellen lit a bonfire, and soon the smell of roasting meat filled the air. We gathered around a big stone table with all kinds of grilled food. I sat at the head with Jonathan, Robert, and the knights along the sides. Linda and Tina, my two mages, also met each other for the first time. It felt warm and lively, like a real home. I liked this feeling a lot. I insisted that the servants sit at the table with us. Robert raised his mug of wheat ale and toasted my promotion. Everyone drank and celebrated. The maid's cheeks turned rosy from the alcohol, and people sang and danced around the bonfire. We ate maybe 50 pounds of meat, half of the castle's entire stock. After dinner, Linda went straight to bed since it was her first time drinking, and she was exhausted from the journey. Later that night, Tina and I went up to the top floor of the castle and looked out at the stars. From 4 stories up, I could see all of Hope Town, mostly darkness with just a few tiny lights scattered around. I told Tina it was beautiful and peaceful. She agreed and said she liked it here because there were no stuffy noble customs. But she also pointed out that while we enjoyed ourselves, the serfs out there were still going hungry and wearing rags. I told her firmly that I would change that and make this land better. She said she believed me, that I was different from other hypocritical nobles. I asked Tina to teach me magic. Originally, I'd planned to skip magic and focus on battle aura, since training both would limit my progress. But now with the system tying my advancement to reputation, that wasn't a problem anymore. Tina rolled her eyes and told me to reach first rank in magic first. I snapped my fingers and released a wave of magic power. I was already a first-rank mage. She was stunned and backed away in disbelief. Yesterday my magic had been barely detectable, and now I was first rank? She reminded me our original deal was just room and board for 3 months in exchange for the spatial ring. I offered to extend it to 6 months. She said her injuries would heal in 3, so what was the point? I sweetened the deal. The first 3 months would be free room and board, and for the next 3 months, I'd cover all the materials for her magic experiments. Having a noble lord supply your research materials was much safer and more convenient than searching on your own. She thought it over and agreed. Then a pitch-black pigeon with glowing orange eyes flew in through the window. Tina warned me it was made with splicing magic. There was a small tube tied to its leg with a note inside. Tina checked it for poison first, then I unrolled the paper. It read, "Dear little lord, you killed our companion. We will not let this go." My blood ran cold. The companion was clearly Blake, the dark mage I'd killed that day. But the word that terrified me was we. Not one person, a group. A whole organization of dark mages now had a grudge against me, and they knew exactly where I lived and who I was. I told Tina the whole story about what happened on the road. She pieced it together. Blake had originally poisoned the old Chris, then spotted the Dragon Eye Stone, and I'd killed him. Now his organization wanted revenge. I felt awkward. I'd just promised Tina 3 months of magic materials, and before I could even start, I dragged a dangerous enemy to her doorstep. She had every reason to take back her spatial ring and leave. To my surprise, Tina patted my shoulder and told me not to worry. She'd help me fight the dark mages. I was relieved and grateful. We agreed to start magic lessons the next day, then said goodnight. Back in my room, I lay in bed thinking. The dark mages lurking in the shadows were unsettling, but I couldn't let fear slow me down. As a transmigrator with a system, my growth speed was far beyond normal. I needed to focus on earning reputation, developing my territory, and recruiting more powerful allies. With that plan in mind, I drifted off to sleep. The next morning, I found Tina and Linda already at the breakfast table, happily eating cream bread. Linda asked if I'd really invented snow cake, and when I confirmed it, both she and Tina gave me 2 reputation points each. I told Linda that once she helped me plant fruit trees, I could make things even more delicious. Her eyes lit up. I asked how long it would take her to grow a sapling into a full fruit-bearing tree. She counted on her fingers and said 5 days. That was incredible. Natural growth would take a year or 2. My plan was to buy saplings instead of just buying fruit, because planting trees meant jobs for my people, which meant wages and reputation for me. After breakfast, Tina and I went outside for my first magic lesson. She handed me a wand and said she'd teach me the basic fireball spell first. She told me to channel my magic power and imagine fire on the tip of the wand. She demonstrated. An orange flame appeared on hers. I tried it, and a fireball instantly appeared on mine too. Tina's voice cut off mid-sentence. She'd been about to say it usually takes days or even months to learn this spell, but I'd done it immediately. I tossed the fireball at an empty patch of ground. It exploded, leaving a half-meter crater of scorched earth. Then I wondered, could I do other magic the same way? I imagined lightning on my wand. A blue electric arc appeared and shot out, shattering a boulder 15 meters away into pieces. Then I tried a wind blade, and it sliced clean through a tree trunk thick as a bowl, leaving a mirror-smooth cut. Tina's jaw dropped. She'd taken 3 whole days to learn the fireball when she was a student, and her teacher had praised her as a gifted mage. Yet I'd just learned 3 different spells in minutes, figuring out 2 of them completely on my own. She was trembling as she asked if I'd learned all of those just now. The 3 spells used about 1/5 of my magic power, meaning I could cast around 15 spells total. Each one was powerful enough to take down 2 or 3 dozen trainee knights. Tina wiped the sweat from her forehead and asked if I'd be willing to become her student. I looked at this girl barely 2 years older than me and told her no way. Calling someone that young, teacher, felt like I was getting the short end of the deal. Tina got annoyed and revealed she was actually a 4th-rank mage. I was surprised. A 4th-rank mage could flatten a small town. That showed just how talented she was. I agreed to learn magic from her, but refused to call her teacher. She huffed and turned away. I practiced until I'd used up all my magic power, then stopped. Tina said I was only lacking real combat experience now. After resting, I gathered everyone in the castle and announced my plan. To celebrate my promotion to 1st-rank magic warrior, I'd give away all the castle's stored food as a free lunch for every person in the territory. Mrs. Ellen asked what we'd eat ourselves. I told her not to worry. I was sending a knight to Mott City to buy 5,000 pounds of grain. We just needed to keep enough for our own lunch. I gave everyone a job. Mrs. Ellen would set up a big cooking pot in the courtyard. Ruth and the maids would help cook. Jonathan and the knights would haul grain from the cellar. Robert would go announce the news across the territory. One knight would ride to Mott City for supplies. Linda asked what she should do, and I told her to tend the flowers and plants around the castle and make me a nice garden. She happily ran off without realizing she'd basically been given busy work. Robert went through the territory banging a copper gong, announcing free lunch for all. The people couldn't believe it. Many of them hadn't had a full meal in days. Soon they came streaming toward the castle in groups, carrying chipped bowls, wearing patched clothes, their faces sunken and their skin yellowish. A huge pot steamed with white bread on top and rice porridge with meat underneath. Jonathan kept the line orderly. Adults got 1 bowl of porridge and 2 breads. Children got 1 of each. When the people saw there was actual meat in the porridge, they nearly cried with happiness. Every person who received food gave me 1 reputation point. With about 200 people in the territory, I earned 220 reputation points from this single meal. While everyone was eating, a little girl around 5 or 6 bumped into me and spilled porridge on my robe. Her mother was terrified and dropped to her knees, begging forgiveness. I just pinched the girl's cheek and told her not to run around, or I'd spank her. The girl, Vivian, asked if I'd make the yummy meat porridge again. Her mother panicked at the bold question, but I told Vivian that of course I would, and someday she'd eat even better things. That earned me 2 reputation points from Vivian and 1 from her mother. I went upstairs to change clothes. By the time I came back, everything was cleaned up and the people had gone back to work. I'd planned to go sell snow cake in Mott City again, but with all the money I'd squeezed from Anthony, I had plenty for now. A deafening roar shook the air from somewhere in the distance. Tina came over with a grave expression and told me it was a dragon, an evil dragon. On the magic continent, dragons represent evil and destruction. They burn, kill, and plunder without restraint. I grabbed my sword, a fine blade called the green steel sword that the original Chris's father had given him as a coming-of-age gift. Outside, Tina, Linda, Jonathan, and 3 first-rank knights were already assembled, every fighter I had. We followed the roaring to the border with Anthony's territory. There, In the middle of his fields was a black dragon about 30 meters long, covered in dark scales, with 2 pairs of wings spanning over 20 meters, horns on its head, and burning red eyes. It was spraying fire everywhere, torching Anthony's crops. A knight in silver armor was fighting it one-on-one, dodging its jaws while landing powerful sword strikes. Jonathan estimated the knight was at least 6th rank. The dragon was only in its juvenile stage, a 5-rank magical beast in terms of current power, though by nature it was ultimately a 9-rank creature. On this continent, dragons grow 1 rank every 10 years without any training. Most get killed young because they can't resist causing havoc early on. Anthony stood off to the side watching his fields burn, looking like he wanted to cry. He'd just been robbed of all his money by me, and now his crops were getting destroyed. When he noticed me watching, he ordered his bearded knight to push the battle toward my territory. I saw through his plan immediately. The fight started shifting toward my land. I asked Linda if we could use the soul crystals to tame the dragon. She shook her head. Even though the dragon was only at 5-rank strength, its soul was that of a 9-rank creature. Our low-level crystals could only handle 3-rank beasts at most. I dropped that idea and assessed our forces instead. With the mysterious 6th-rank knight fighting the dragon, plus Tina as a 4th-rank mage, Jonathan as a 3rd-rank knight, Linda as a 2nd-rank mage, me as a 1st-rank magic warrior, and 3 1st-rank knights, we had a real shot at killing it. Jonathan finally noticed the enemy knights were herding the dragon our way and asked if we should try to stop them. I told him to wait. The dragon was being led closer and closer to the border. Anthony's 3rd-rank knight was getting hurt badly in the process. When the dragon finally crossed into my territory, I drew my green steel sword with a sharp ring of metal. Jonathan asked what I was planning. I stared at the dragon and said one word at a time. I'm going to slay it. Jonathan tried to talk me out of it. This was a 5-rank magical beast. But Tina said that with all of us working together alongside that 6th-rank knight, we could take the dragon. Plus, a dragon's body was full of valuable magic materials. Linda looked eager to fight too. Jonathan saw he was outnumbered and drew his sword. Anthony, watching from his side, was relieved the dragon had left his land and smugly expected it to destroy mine. His knights pulled back to rest their injuries, leaving only the 6th-rank knight still fighting. The battle had already burned one of my good fields to ash. I charged in with my sword in one hand and wand in the other. Tina and Linda were right behind me, and Jonathan brought up the rear with the 3 other knights, 7 of us total. I opened with a lightning bolt to the dragon's head. It staggered and roared furiously, then swiped at me with its claws. I rolled aside and stabbed at its paw, but my sword just sparked off the scales without cutting through. Its defense was beyond what I could break at my level. Linda bound the dragon with massive green vines as thick as a man's thigh. Then Tina floated into the air and unleashed a spell called Magic Storm, an 8-meter-tall tornado of raw magic power that tore into the dragon's scales, peeling them back in large patches. The dragon howled in pain. The 6th-rank knight seized the opening. His aura blazed as he gripped his sword with both hands and brought it crashing down on the dragon's skull. The impact sent shockwaves through the air and slammed the huge head into the ground, leaving a deep crater. Unlike a normal beast that would try to flee, a dragon never runs. It got back up. Jonathan and I and the other knights hacked at its exposed spots, opening several bleeding wounds. But this thing was tougher than I'd expected. Even at 5 rank, its attack and defense outclassed a typical 6-rank beast. The only reason we had a chance was because it had exhausted itself earlier by spraying fire so many times. I shouted for everyone to keep attacking and not let it recover. I aimed fireballs at its eyes. The dragon closed its eyelids just in time, and the explosion fizzled against its face. Then it broke free of the vines and counterattacked, swinging its spiked tail like a giant whip across a huge arc, hitting several of us at once. The impact felt like being hit by a car and threw me back over 10 meters. Tina and Linda handled it better with their magic shields. The 6th-rank knight pressed harder, keeping the dragon too busy defending to launch another attack. He'd come here to slay this dragon, and with our help, he could see the odds had improved significantly. Over on his side of the border, Anthony and his knights watched with their jaws hanging open. They'd wanted the dragon to wreck my territory, but instead it was getting beaten down. Anthony couldn't understand how I had a 4th-rank mage on my side, or how I could use magic at all. His whole worldview was falling apart. Then the 6th-rank knight leaped high into the air, his battle aura pouring out endlessly, and shouted the name of his technique. Heavenly Blazing Slash. The 6th-rank knight's aura blazed with golden light as he raised his sword, projecting a 5-meter energy blade. The dragon sensed the danger and formed a massive black magic sphere from its horns. The two attacks collided in an explosion of wind and black lightning. The knight's strike cut through and slashed open the dragon's skull, sending blood flowing like a small river. But the dragon wasn't finished. It swiped back with its claws, though the knight dodged in time. Then something unexpected happened. The dragon stabbed its own chest with its claws, opening 3 bloody holes. Tina told me it was using a rare dragon ability called Berserk Mode. The dragon wrapped itself in its own blood, turning its body red and radiating a terrifying aura. Even the 6th-rank knight backed away. The dragon gathered crimson light into a 4-meter-wide energy ball and fired it at us. The 6th-rank knight threw up a silver barrier. Tina raised a magic shield, and Linda grew hardened trees for cover. But the blast was devastating. It turned everything within 2 kilometers to ash, cracked through all our defenses, and exploded in the middle of our group. I was blown dozens of meters away and coughed up blood. Jonathan's armor was cracked. 2 of the 3 first-rank knights were knocked unconscious, and both Tina's and Linda's wands snapped. Anthony was cheering from the sidelines, thrilled to see us getting crushed. We regrouped quickly. Staying together was our only chance. Then I decided to try something. I channeled all my battle aura into my left palm and formed the silver dragon. 18 dragon-subduing palms. Something incredible happened. The moment my aura dragon appeared, the real dragon froze in terror. It sat down, covered its head with its claws, and trembled violently. My battle skill had some kind of natural suppression effect on dragons. The 6th-rank knight instantly recognized the opening and shouted for everyone to unleash their strongest attacks. He used Heaven-Shattering Slash. Jonathan used II Slash. Tina fired a Magic Tornado, and Linda summoned a Death Flytrap. My aura dragon struck the dragon's head and blasted open a bloody hole. The berserk state faded, returning the dragon to its normal weakened form. It took every attack at full force and collapsed, barely alive. I sprinted forward and drove my green steel sword into the wound my aura dragon had made. The blade sank in completely. The dragon shuddered twice and went still. 300 reputation points. Everyone gathered around to confirm the kill. The 6th-rank knight was amazed that my battle skill could suppress a dragon. I told him I wasn't sure why it worked. Maybe it just did. He introduced himself as Count Ford of Silent Ridge. I bowed politely and introduced myself as Baron Chris. He praised me for being so strong at my age, saying my future was limitless. I thanked him and stayed humble. Count Ford flipped the dragon over, cut open its soft belly, and pulled out a fist-sized black sphere, the dragon core. He asked if he could take it and leave the rest of the body to me. I agreed without hesitation. The dragon core was valuable, but an entire dragon carcass was worth far more. Ford told me to come find him in Silent Ridge if I ever needed help, then hurried off. Once he was gone, I clapped my hands and said it was time to check our loot. Tina explained what we had. The dragon's fangs had excellent magic-conducting properties and could be forged into a dragon-tooth sword, the perfect weapon for a magic warrior like me. The horns were great magic materials for her and Linda's experiments. The scales and skin could be made into armor, and the meat was edible. Over on his side of the border, Anthony was clenching his fists so hard his nails dug into his palms. By noble law, anything that falls within a lord's territory belongs to that lord. The dragon was entirely my property because it had died on my land, the very land Anthony had pushed it onto. He was burning with jealousy but couldn't do a thing about it. Then Jonathan pointed at my right hand. Red scales had grown on the back of it, right where dragon blood had touched my skin when I drove the sword into the dragon's head. Tina confirmed that only the blood-covered areas had changed. Everyone else tried smearing dragon blood on themselves, but nothing happened. It only worked on me. The system gave me a new task: collect the dragon blood and take a dragon blood bath. The reward would be a dragon human form. I ordered Jonathan to haul the dragon carcass back to the castle, drain all the blood, and collect every drop, even blood-soaked soil from the battlefield. As we carried the enormous corpse through the territory, all my people saw it. They couldn't believe their lord had slain a dragon. The reputation points kept rolling in, over 100 just from the walk home. Combined with the 300 from the kill itself, this one dragon had earned me 400 reputation points. Back at the castle, Robert was stunned. I told the servants to drain all the remaining blood into a bathtub for me. I told Mrs. Ellen we'd be eating dragon meat for dinner. After changing clothes, Ruth told me the dragon blood bath was ready. I went to the third-floor bathroom, where a huge wooden tub was filled to the brim with red liquid. The smell of blood was overwhelming. I told Ruth to keep adding more blood as needed, and not to be scared no matter what happened to my body. I stripped down and climbed in. The blood felt warm, like a hot spring. Red scales immediately started growing all over my body, wherever the blood touched. I sank in until only my head was above the surface, looked up at the ceiling, and drifted off to sleep without realizing it. When I woke up, about half the blood had been absorbed. I stepped out of the tub and walked to the mirror to see what had changed. I looked in the mirror and couldn't even recognize myself as human anymore. My entire body was covered in red scales, my fingers had grown sharp claws, a pair of 10-centimeter horns stuck out from the top of my head, and small dark red wings had sprouted from my back. I clenched my fist and felt incredible power. My sensitivity to magic in the air was heightened too. Fire elements gathered at my fingertips, and with just a snap, a flame burned in my palm. The system confirmed the reward, dragon human form. I estimated my combat power had increased by at least 50%. With a thought, the scales faded and I returned to normal. The form wasn't free though. It constantly burned battle aura or magic power, and at my current level, I could only maintain it for about 5 minutes. On my way out of the bathroom, I ran into Ruth carrying another bucket of dragon blood. She mentioned that a very strong-looking horse had appeared outside the castle. Curious, I headed out. The dragon's carcass had already been processed, horns removed, scales stripped, skin peeled off, servants collecting the last trickles of blood. Jonathan pointed to a horse a few hundred meters away. It was massive, about 2 meters tall, half again taller than a normal horse, with incredibly developed muscles. The knights were keeping watch on it. Jonathan explained they'd found it while collecting spilled dragon blood from the battlefield. The horse wasn't afraid of people at all and had followed the knights back, refusing to leave. I grabbed a bucket of dragon blood and set it down nearby, then stepped back. The horse walked right up and started drinking. Before my eyes, fine scales grew across its body, 2 bumps rose on its head, and a pair of fangs appeared in its mouth. I figured it out. This was a dragon-blooded horse, a horse carrying dragon lineage. That made me wonder if my own body had dragon blood too, since I could also absorb dragon blood. But I found nothing in Chris's memories connecting his family to dragons. I tried approaching the horse, but when I got within 3 meters, it spun around and kicked. I caught its hoof against my crossed arms, but the force pushed me back over a dozen steps. This horse was 7 or 8 times stronger than a normal one, easily capable of traveling thousands of miles a day, and it could keep getting stronger if I kept feeding it dragon blood. I decided not to force it and instead sent Jonathan to fetch Linda. When she arrived, I asked her to teach me how to use the soul crystal. She drew a strange pattern on parchment and had me drip my blood onto it, which made it glow with colorful light. Next, I needed to get a drop of the horse's blood. I charged at it with my sword while Jonathan and 2 knights surrounded it from 3 sides. But the horse wasn't defenseless. The bumps on its head grew into small horns, and red energy gathered into an orange fireball the size of a soccer ball. This horse could use magic. Its combat power was already on par with a first-rank magical beast. I wanted it even more now. The dragon-blooded horse was smart. It aimed its fireball at the weakest knight, blasting him aside and creating an opening in our circle. It bolted for freedom. I wasn't about to let it escape after it drank my dragon blood. I activated my dragon human form. Red scales covered my body, my muscles swelled with explosive power, and I launched myself forward like a cannonball, leaving red afterimages in the air. The horse kicked up a wall of dirt behind it, but I shot right through without slowing down. It fired another fireball at me, but in dragon form I caught it with one hand and crushed it, flames spilling between my fingers. The horse ignited little flames on its hooves and accelerated even further. I beat my small wings, generating a massive burst of thrust that rocketed me above it. I landed on its back. It bucked wildly, trying to throw me off, so I punched it once on the head, holding back enough not to kill it, and it collapsed, knocked out cold. I scratched its neck to draw blood and pressed the soul crystal against the wound. The gray crystal turned blood red. Linda performed the contract ritual. The parchment with my blood floated up, wrapped around the crystal, and melted into it. The unconscious horse twitched, its eyes snapped open, and a red symbol appeared on its forehead. I felt a connection form between us, like an invisible thread. When the horse stood back up, it didn't resist me anymore. I climbed on and pushed it to run. The speed was unbelievable. Flames erupted from its hooves, and I estimated we hit around 150 kilometers per hour. The wind was so strong I had to lie flat against its back. It was absolutely thrilling. Back at the castle, I tested the soul crystal and recalled the horse into it. A black vortex appeared. The horse walked in, and the vortex shrank back into the crystal ball. Very convenient. The dragon's carcass had been fully drained and butchered by now. I asked Robert where the dragon parts were stored and followed him down to the basement. In the first room, I found the two fangs, each about 1 meter 20 long, still streaked with blood. Along the wall were 16 dragon claws of various lengths, and scattered across the floor were 50 or 60 teeth ranging from fist size to smaller. My plan was clear. The fangs would be forged into a long sword, the perfect weapon for a magic warrior like me. The claws would become short swords and daggers. They weren't magic conducting like the fangs, but they'd be incredibly sharp, enough to arm an elite knight squad. I decided the smaller teeth would be made into axes as backup weapons. I stored the two long fangs in my spatial ring and moved on to the next room. The second room was filled with dragon scales covering the entire floor, thousands of them, each about palm-sized and 2 centimeters thick, cool to the touch. I tested one with my sword and could barely leave a white scratch on it. Armor made from these could block a full attack from any knight below 3rd rank. I picked out 100 good ones and put them in my spatial ring, planning to have armor made in Mott City soon. The third room had the dragon's skin, folded up neatly like a blanket. It was about half a centimeter thick, slippery smooth, and extremely tough. Combined with the scales, it would make armor that was practically impenetrable. There was also a dragon tendon, thumb-thick and yellowish. I pulled a 10-centimeter piece and stretched it to nearly 50 centimeters. Perfect material for a bow. The penetrating power would be far beyond any ordinary weapon. Robert offered to pick out a good dragon bone later and have a dragon bone bow made for me. I appreciated his thoughtfulness. Back outside, 5 ox carts arrived loaded with 100 sacks of grain, the 5,000 pounds I'd ordered. The knight Shiloh had completed the purchase. The grain merchant asked for 1 gold coin to settle the balance, and I flicked 1 out of my spatial ring. With 2 rings now, I kept my money on me at all times. Then it was time for dinner. I had Ruth call everyone who'd participated in the dragon fight to the dining hall. Mrs. Ellen brought out plates of roasted dragon meat. The smell alone was incredible. Robert, ever the perfect host, raised a toast to me for giving everyone the chance to eat such a rare delicacy. That single toast earned me 16 reputation points from the 8 people at the table. The dragon meat tasted similar to beef, but chewier and incredibly flavorful. The moment I swallowed the first piece, warmth spread through my stomach and I felt a surge of strength. My physical constitution was noticeably enhanced. Everyone who ate it had the same reaction, rosy cheeks and visibly improved vitality. That triggered another round of reputation points from each person. I opened my system panel. My reputation had reached 837 out of 2,000. In just a few days, I was already nearly halfway there. At this rate, I'd reach 2nd-rank magic warrior within 2 weeks. I ate 2 full plates of dragon meat. My stomach felt like it had a little furnace burning inside, and my strength increased noticeably. Everyone at the table was experiencing similar improvements, especially the knights, whose battle aura grew a bit stronger. I made a mental note. If I ever got the chance, I'd hunt more dragons. After dinner, I went up to the 4th floor of the castle alone and stared out at my dark territory. Despite today's big victory, the thought of the dark mage organization watching me from the shadows made my chest tighten. Tina appeared beside me. As we stood by the window, I suddenly noticed something in a large tree in the courtyard below. I grabbed my wand and fired a lightning bolt at it. A dark shape fell from the branches. I used a wind spell to pull it up to us. It was a strange bird, the body of a cuckoo with an owl's head. Another spliced creature, clearly sent to spy on me. I searched it but found no letter and no useful clues. I was furious. Those dark mages were watching me. Tina laughed softly and told me not to worry too much. She said they were busy with something else and wouldn't come after me for a while. I asked her what she knew. She'd clearly dealt with them before. They were the ones who had injured her. She told me everything. The organization was called the Edmund Society, active in the northwest of the Eagle Kingdom. It had over 100 dark mages, more than 10 of them at 3rd rank or above. Their leader, Edmund, was a 5th rank dark mage, and they kept a 6th rank dragon. I felt a chill run through me. Just thinking about the 5th rank dragon we barely killed today with a whole team. A 6th rank dragon would be incomprehensibly powerful. And if every dark mage in the group was as strong as Blake, the one I'd killed, they could each take on a 3rd rank knight and a 2nd rank mage simultaneously. Tina told me they wouldn't bother with me for about a year. After that, I'd be facing the full force of the Edmund Society. She suggested I could just leave the Eagle Kingdom to avoid them. I refused. I told her I wasn't going anywhere. I would destroy the Edmund Society. Dark mages like them had no place in this world. That earned me 5 reputation points from Tina. Her eyes lit up, and she said she'd fight alongside me until the very end. I asked her to handle security around the castle, to sweep the entire territory with magic and eliminate every spliced spy creature. I didn't want the enemy knowing all my cards before the fight even started. She promised to do a full sweep the next day. The situation was serious. I had a powerful enemy that knew everything about me while I knew almost nothing about them. But I wasn't alone. I had friends, loyal people, and a system that would help me grow faster than anyone thought possible. 1 year was tight, but I wasn't giving up. Tina reminded me that I needed to recruit more powerful knights and mages before the 1-year deadline, or we'd never stand a chance against the Edmund Society. I agreed, but first I had to develop my territory. Without money and resources, I couldn't support anyone I recruited. She offered to come with me to Mott City the next day and use wind magic to whip the cream instead of having the knights stir by hand. That would be much faster. I couldn't believe I hadn't thought of that. That night, I sorted my priorities. First, build up industries in Hope Town so the territory could grow and generate reputation. Second, get the dragon materials forged into equipment as soon as possible. I was especially curious about what kind of weapon the dragon fangs could become. The next morning after breakfast, I told Linda to come along to Mott City to help me pick out good fruit tree saplings. She agreed enthusiastically, promising she could make anything I bought bear fruit within days. Outside, I summoned the dragon-blooded horse from its crystal ball. I let Tina and Linda ride it while I took the chestnut mare. On the road, my mare kept drifting toward the dragon-blooded horse. Jonathan explained that my mare was female and the dragon horse was male. She was attracted to him. The dragon horse wasn't interested and kept glaring at her, but I didn't stop them. Maybe someday she'd produce a foal with some dragon blood in it. Before reaching the city, I recalled the dragon horse to avoid drawing unwanted attention to its scales. We passed through the gates and headed to my rented shop. To my surprise, Baron Raymond's butler Byron was waiting outside, looking anxious. He said Raymond was desperate. I hadn't come yesterday, and his daughter needed her snow cake. I apologized and explained I'd been busy, then promised to sell snow cake every day from now on. Byron urged me to hurry. I unlocked the shop, gave Jonathan money to buy ingredients, and politely asked Byron to step outside since the recipe was a trade secret. Byron understood about trade secrets and left, saying he'd return in an hour. Jonathan soon came back with all the ingredients. This time, instead of having the knights stir everything by hand, Tina used her wind magic. She pointed her wand at each basin and created little whirlwinds that whipped the egg whites in under a minute. The knights stood there amazed. The whole batch of cream was ready in about 10 minutes, several times faster than before. I put Linda in charge of calling out to customers. A pretty young girl shouting about snow cake would attract way more people than a bunch of rough-looking men. Jonathan looked visibly relieved. The embarrassment from last time had clearly scarred him. Linda had a powerful voice that carried for several streets. Unlike 2 days ago, Snowcake already had a reputation now. Repeat customers came rushing in, and soon a line of 20 or 30 people formed at our stall, with more on the way. Silver coins clinked in steadily, and reputation points rolled in one after another. Meanwhile, Tina kept producing cream nonstop in the back. Then a squad of city guards in silver armor came pushing through the crowd, scattering the customers. Their leader was a young man in his mid-20s, tall and muscular, who looked a lot like Anthony. This was Howard Hughes, Anthony's older brother, the eldest son of the Hughes family, and heir to a Viscount title. Howard demanded to know who gave us permission to set up outside our shop. I pointed out there was no rule against it. He claimed we were blocking traffic. I shot back that no other shop had lines this long, especially not that red date cake shop, which happened to be his family's business. That was clearly the real reason he was here. Our snow cake was hurting his sales. He got furious and thrust his spear at our stall. I grabbed the shaft with one hand and stopped it cold. He pushed harder but couldn't move it an inch. He was a second-rank knight. The shock on his face was priceless. After eating dragon meat and unlocking my dragon human form, my raw physical strength now matched a second-rank knight's. I shoved the spear forward and sent him stumbling back. He released his battle aura, refusing to believe it. I pulled out my green steel sword and wand from my spatial ring and told him I wasn't just a knight. I was a first-rank magic warrior. He could barely process it. I told him that if he was here to cause trouble, he should turn around and go home. I mocked him for still being stuck at second rank when the other two Viscount family's heirs had already reached third rank. That hit a nerve. I kept going, telling him he should just stay indoors so nobody could laugh at him. Howard went red-eyed and swung his spear at me. I blocked with my sword. Sparks flew and the shockwave pushed the crowd back. Before he could attack again, a blast of wind erupted beneath him and sent him flying dozens of meters, crashing face-first into the ground. Tina stepped out of the shop and said one word, "Scram." Howard looked at the 4-star badge on her robe, and his face went pale. A 4th-rank mage. He scrambled to his feet and ran. Tina turned back inside without another word. After a brief silence, the customers lined up again, and we went back to selling. Later, I found out what Howard did next. He went to his family's red date cake shop on the same street and lost his temper when he learned they'd only sold 3 pieces all day, compared to our dozens of snow cakes at 2 silver each. He ordered his manager, Stephen, to cut the price in half, from 20 copper to 10. Then, despite claiming he didn't want to try our product, he ate an entire bowl of snow cake and cleaned it out. After he finished, his face turned red with embarrassment. And somehow, I got 1 reputation point from him. I couldn't figure that out. I'd insulted and humiliated the guy, and he gave me reputation? I decided to keep my distance from that weirdo. I kept selling and even had a signboard made with Hope Town in small letters and Snow Cake in big ones. I wanted to build my territory's brand. The more people heard about Hope Town, the more free citizens might come settle there and become my subjects, generating reputation. When word came that Howard had dropped red date cake to 10 copper, I wasn't worried. My customers were in line for snow cake, and none of them budged. Howard slashed the price again to 5 copper, below cost. Stephen warned him they'd lose money, but Howard insisted that as a great Viscount family, he couldn't lose to some country baron. He sent kids running through the streets, shouting about the sale. The people in my line glanced up and went right back to waiting. I smiled to myself. Trying to beat a 21st century dessert with a price war on red date cakes? Howard had a lot to learn. Howard's price war didn't worry me at all. His red date cake and my snow cake targeted completely different customers. His was just mashed dates stuffed in bread with a little sugar, sold at 3 times the bread price. Mine was real 21st century cream, something this world had never tasted. In less than an hour, I sold 80 servings for 160 silver coins and 80 reputation points. Once I was sure Howard wasn't a threat, I left the shop with Jonathan in charge and took Linda to buy fruit tree saplings. I remembered there was a plant market in the East District of Mott City where free citizens sold their cultivated seedlings. I wanted apples, pears, grapes, and oranges, common fruits from my old world that were easy to process. My plan was to teach my people how to make fruit wine, juice, and jam, building up more industries for the territory. I stopped at a money exchange to break 5 silver coins into copper, just in case. The plant market was lively, with vendors everywhere selling flowers, herbs, and seedlings. We found an apple tree stall first. The seller had over 20 saplings at 20 copper each. Linda carefully inspected them and pointed out 3 defective ones to skip. Even the seller was shocked. He'd been a fruit farmer for over 15 years and couldn't easily spot those rejects, yet this teenage girl picked them out instantly. I bought the remaining 20. We continued shopping and ended up with 20 apple saplings, 30 grapevines, 50 pear trees, and 50 orange trees. Linda's expertise saved me from buying any bad stock. As we were about to leave, Linda suddenly froze and pointed at something, about to shout. I clamped my hand over her mouth just in time. On a nearby stall sat a black seed the size of a walnut, oval-shaped and glossy. The vendor, a skinny man, claimed it was some family heirloom, black pearl flower, and wanted 20 copper. I pretended I wasn't interested and started walking away. He chased after us, dropping the price to 5 copper. I turned back, tossed 5 coins down, grabbed the seed, and left quickly. Once we were safely away, I let go of Linda's mouth. She was buzzing with excitement. It was a magical plant seed with extremely strong magic energy. If I hadn't stopped her from blurting that out, the seller would have jacked the price up to 5 gold coins. Magical plants were always sold in gold, not copper. We'd scored an incredible bargain for just 5 copper coins. I was thrilled about the 5 copper seed. Linda couldn't identify it yet. She'd need to grow it first to know what kind of magical plant it was. I handed it to her for safekeeping. Then I heard a familiar voice behind me. It was my older brother, Brent Jordan, the family's eldest son and future Viscount heir. He was about 25 and looked a lot like me. He was carrying a potted flower he'd bought. We hadn't seen each other in over a month, so he threw his arm around my neck and insisted I come visit grandmother. That worked out perfectly. The family had a mid-level blacksmith I could ask to forge my dragon fang sword. Linda wasn't sure whether to follow, but I waved her along. We reached the Jordan family's Viscount manor in about 10 minutes. In a small side courtyard, grandmother, Lady Vitry, sat in a long chair. She was around 70, with wrinkled skin and white hair but a warm, kind smile. She grabbed my hands and said I looked bigger and stronger than before. When she noticed Linda behind me, she asked if this was my Baroness. Linda's face went bright red, and she quickly denied it. I introduced them properly. Grandmother was very fond of Linda and kept holding her hand, looking back and forth between us with a knowing smile. Linda was too embarrassed to look up. Then an annoying voice came from outside. In walked my cousin, Plato Jordan, my uncle's son. He was in his early 20s, tall but stick-thin, with a pointy chin and squinty eyes. He was carrying 5 paper bowls tied together, snow cake from my own shop. He didn't know that. Plato sneered that he'd brought grandmother the most popular treat in Mott City, 2 silver coins per bowl, and suggested that a poor country baron like me probably couldn't afford it, then mockingly offered me a taste. Linda couldn't hold back. She told him flatly that Chris invented snow cake, owned the shop, and that we ate it every day until we were sick of it. The room went dead silent. Plato stammered and asked if the ancestral secret recipe story was a lie. I told him it was just marketing. He asked about the supposed 1 silver coin cost. I told him the real cost was 18 copper, 10 times profit. Everyone gasped, especially Brent. As the future Viscount running family businesses with 2 or 3 times profit margins at best, 10 times was beyond anything he could imagine. Plato was sweating. He tried to recover by mocking me for not bringing grandmother a gift. Brent started to cover for me, saying the potted flower was from both of us. But before he could finish, I reached into my spatial ring and pulled out a big chunk of bright red meat. I told grandmother it was 10 pounds of dragon meat. It would strengthen her body and help her live a long, healthy life. Everyone in the room froze. Brent's hand holding the potted flower stopped midair. Plato's eyes went wide. He couldn't believe I had dragon meat. Linda casually explained that we'd teamed up with a 6th-rank knight to kill a dragon yesterday. Plato assumed the knight had just tossed us a few scraps as payment. Then Linda almost blurted out that we'd kept the entire dragon. I had to rush over and cover her mouth again. This girl had no filter. If people found out I had a whole dragon carcass, everyone would come after me. Grandmother smiled warmly and said she loved any gift from her grandson. She told the servants to cook the dragon meat and insisted we all stay for the meal. Brent and Plato couldn't take their eyes off the meat as it was carried away. In the kingdom's capital, dragon meat sold for 1 gold coin per pound, if you could even find it. Plato kept pressing for details. Linda told him it was a 5th-rank dragon that could use berserk mode, and that I'd played the biggest role in killing it, delivering the final blow myself. Both Brent and Plato blurted out in shock. Last they knew, I was just an ordinary person. Linda told them I was now a magic warrior. Plato refused to believe it. He accused me of having a little girl make up stories and challenged me to a one-on-one duel. Brent shook his head at me, warning me not to accept. Plato was a peak 2nd-rank knight, too strong for a 1st-rank magic warrior. But I agreed without hesitation. Grandmother gave her blessing, saying young men should have fighting spirit. Plato and I headed to the family's training ground, a field the size of a soccer pitch where house guards usually practiced. The guard captain cleared the area for us. Plato grabbed a sword from the weapon rack and beckoned me forward with a smirk. I pulled my green steel sword and wand from my spatial rings and took a fighting stance. He was startled to see I had spatial rings, and then noticed I had 2 of them. The shocks just kept piling up for him. He told me to attack first. I didn't hold back. I sprinted forward at a speed that surprised everyone, then fired a lightning bolt from my wand. Plato's eyes flashed as he raised his sword to block, confirming that Linda had told the truth. I really was a mage. The lightning hit Plato's sword, and the shock traveled straight through the metal into his hand. The idiot didn't know metal conducts electricity. His arm went numb, and his grip shook. The watching guards gasped when they saw me use magic. Sam, the 4-rank guard captain, noticed I also had battle aura on my sword. I was both a knight and a mage. I closed the distance fast and brought my sword down on him. He barely recovered in time to block. Our blades clashed with sparks flying, and I could tell my strength surprised him. I followed up with a fireball aimed at his face. He ducked just in time. It singed a few hairs as it flew over his head. Then he jumped back to create distance. The first exchange went my way, but I knew it was because I'd had the advantage of surprise and his overconfidence. Once Plato took me seriously, things would get harder. He came at me full force, moving like a cannonball. I threw a wind blade at him, but he cut through it without slowing down. Our swords met, and I felt the difference. His power was like a mountain. I was pushed back 3 or 4 steps while he didn't budge. He pressed his attack relentlessly, swinging his sword so fast I could barely keep up. I was being driven backward. I decided to go bigger. I combined wind and fire magic into a blazing tornado, flame vortex. The heat warped the air around it. Linda shouted from the sidelines that dual element magic was incredibly difficult and dangerous. Plato countered with a battle skill called Sword Blade Storm, spinning his aura into a silver cyclone. The 2 attacks collided in an explosion of fire and wind. When the dust settled, Plato was still standing, though his clothes were scorched and his hair was curled. Then he laughed and said he'd found my weakness. He switched to a 2-handed grip and came at me with pure physical power. Since I was fighting one-handed, sword in one hand, wand in the other, I couldn't match his strength. If I dropped the wand to use both hands, I'd lose my magic advantage and it would just be a 1st-rank knight versus a peak 2nd-rank knight. Either way, I lost. He hammered me with heavy strikes. I blocked as best I could, but each hit sent me stumbling. The guards watching figured I was done. Plato landed a devastating kick that sent me tumbling across the ground. He sneered and said a 1st-rank magic warrior was nothing special. I looked up at him from the ground, stared him straight in the eyes, and spoke slowly. Dragon human form, my body swelled, muscles bulging, red scales covering my skin, horns growing from my head, and small wings sprouting from my back. I looked like a human dragon. Plato stumbled backward in fear. Brent couldn't believe his eyes. The watching guards all gasped. I grinned and put away my wand. In dragon form, I could cast fire magic with my bare hands. I beat my little wings and shot forward, leaving red afterimages. Plato slashed at me, and our swords clashed, but this time I didn't budge while he was forced back several steps. His face showed pure shock. Then I gathered fire in my left claw, forming a massive fireball over a meter wide. Exploding fireball, it flew at Plato, trailing flames. He countered with a battle skill, projecting a 2-meter silver shield of aura in front of him. The explosion was enormous. Heat waves warped the air, smoke rolled everywhere, and a figure was blasted out of the storm, skidding dozens of meters across the ground. It was Plato. His clothes were shredded, his hair singed, his face covered in soot. I won. The whole place went silent. Nobody had expected this outcome. I took a deep breath and let the dragon form fade. Scales, horns, and wings disappeared as I shrank back to normal. Brent rushed over and grabbed my hand, asking what that was. I told him I'd explain on the way. We left with Linda following behind. The guard captain Sam stared after us and muttered that our family had produced someone remarkable. Plato wiped the ash off his face and swore he'd get me back. Instead of heading to grandmother's for the dragon meat lunch, I told Brent I needed to see the family blacksmith first. The fight with Plato had shown me exactly how much I needed my dragon fong sword. Without it, fighting one-handed with a sword and wand would always leave me at a disadvantage. Brent was confused. I already had father's green steel sword. I just smiled and said he'd see. We walked to the east side of the manor where Daniel, the mid-level blacksmith, had his forge. Inside, over a dozen shirtless, sweating men hammered away at metal. Linda took one look, shrieked, covered her eyes, and ran back outside. Daniel's senior apprentice, Green, came over and offered to handle my request himself, boasting he was a peak beginner-level blacksmith. I pulled a dragon fong from my spatial ring, over a meter long. Green's eyes nearly popped out of his skull. He stammered, "D-dragon fong," and then scrambled away to fetch his master. Brent stared at the fong in shock and asked if the 6th-rank knight had given me this too. I just smiled. Daniel arrived moments later, a bald, 2-meter-tall man with 8-pack abs. The moment he saw the dragon fong, he practically ran to me, his hands hovering over it like he wanted to touch it, but didn't dare. I shoved it into his arms and told him to examine it carefully and forge me a dragon fong sword as soon as possible. Daniel stared at the dragon fong in his arms like he was in a dream. He'd never seen such incredible material in his entire career. When I asked how long it would take, he said the fong was top quality and would need over 10,000 hammer strikes. The earliest he could finish would be tomorrow afternoon before dark. I told him to start right away. He led us to his private forge deep inside the workshop, a soundproofed room with an 80-square-meter space, a huge furnace, and a square forging platform. He had his apprentice, Green, light the fire, and then ordered him to bring out his treasured fire crystals, rare fuel stones that looked like red, semi-transparent eggs with something like lava swirling inside. Daniel tossed a dozen into the furnace, and the flames surged, turning from red to pale purple. The dragon fong started glowing red-hot in the extreme heat. Then something unexpected happened. A ghostly shadow rose from the fong. It was a miniature version of the dragon, barely a meter tall, snarling and baring its fangs. When it looked at me, its eyes burned with hatred. It clearly remembered I was the one who killed it. Daniel was trembling with excitement. He said this was an extreme-grade dragon fong containing the dragon's residual soul. If the forging succeeded, the sword would have a sword spirit. It would only recognize one master, learn that master's fighting style, and provide real combat assistance. I asked whether the soul would accept me since I'd killed it. Daniel waved that concern away. A residual soul has no intelligence, only instinct. All we needed was to quench the blade with my blood to make it recognize me as its source. I activated my dragon human form, pulled out my green steel sword, sliced my wrist, and filled a ceramic jar with my blood, 2 or 3 liters in about 5 minutes. The bleeding left me feeling faint and forced me out of dragon form, but as a first-rank magic warrior, my body was tough enough that it wasn't life-threatening. Daniel was thrilled, saying my blood would raise the sword's quality even further. He pulled the glowing fong from the furnace and poured all my blood over it. Red steam hissed into the air, filling the room with the smell of blood. The dragon's ghostly figure became more solid, wrapped in a layer of red light, its expression turning confused and blank. Daniel raised a heavy black forging hammer and slammed it down on the fong with a thundering clang, shouting, "Return!" The dragon's soul looked at me with a mix of emotions, warmth, anger, confusion, struggling internally. After a moment, its expression calmed. It spread its little wings, flew down to the fong, and melted back inside. The rhythmic hammering of the forge began. My sword was being born. Daniel was completely absorbed in his work, hammering the curved fong straighter with each blow. I quietly told Brent we should leave him to it. Outside, Linda was pouting about all the shirtless men inside. She noticed my pale face and asked what happened. I told her it was nothing, just lost some blood. We headed back to grandmother's courtyard. The dragon meat was already cooked and served. Plato had cleaned himself up and shamelessly showed up for the meal too. When grandmother took her first bite, her face turned rosy and she looked years younger instantly. She said it was wonderful stuff. I told her to eat plenty and that I had more. She waved me off, saying dragon meat was wasted on an old woman and I should save it for young people who could use the strength. I told her she'd live to 100 even without it, and got reputation points just for the compliment. Saying nice things earned reputation too. That was a pleasant surprise. Brent and Plato both dug into the meat eagerly. As knights, they could feel the boost immediately. One bite was worth days of training. Their aura practically boiled inside them. 5 reputation points each from both of them. Grandmother asked who won the fight. Plato buried his face nearly under the table. Brent proudly announced that I'd won. He told grandmother everything. That I was a first-rank magic warrior, that I gained a dragon human form from killing the dragon, and that my pale face was from giving blood for the sword forging, not from the fight. Plato looked like he wanted to disappear. Grandmother said she hadn't expected me to be so talented, and that maybe I could build an even greater family branch someday. She mentioned that even my father had only been a trainee knight at my age. Then she opened up about something I hadn't known. She told me not to blame my father for being distant. He was always busy as the family head, but more importantly, he loved my mother deeply. My mother died from complications giving birth to me. He'd wanted to die with her, but stayed alive for his children, though his heart had died that day. The original Chris never knew this. He'd only wondered why father treated Brent so much better. I told grandmother I'd find a chance to talk to father and try to fix our relationship. Even though I was a transmigrator, hearing about this family history still stung. Then grandmother pulled out a small purple wooden box from her sleeve. Inside, on yellow velvet, lay a pendant, a 5-centimeter heart-shaped red gemstone, semi-transparent, with a pale blue vortex swirling inside it. It hung on a gold chain. She said my grandfather had given it to her before he died, telling her to keep it safe. It was an heirloom passed down through generations from when the Jordan family had been powerful centuries ago. She placed it around my neck and said she saw in me the hope of reviving the family's glory. When I touched the gem, it felt warm. I could feel energy pulsing inside it, perfectly synchronized with my heartbeat. Brent and Plato both looked stunned. They'd had no idea a family heirloom even existed, let alone that grandmother would give it to me. The heart-shaped gem gave me a strange, warm feeling I couldn't explain. It was already past 2 in the afternoon, so I said goodbye to grandmother and left the manor with Linda. We headed back to the snowcake shop. By then, the customer flow had slowed down. Jonathan reported that we'd sold 220 servings for a total of 440 silver coins. A great day for money, though reputation had only been about 160 points. The problem was that repeat customers didn't generate reputation after their first taste. I decided I'd both lower the price to reach more people and develop new products. Earning reputation mattered more than profit right now. I had a year to prepare for the Edmund Society. I gave everyone 5 silver coins as a bonus, including Tina and Linda. The knights all gave me 5 reputation points each, but the 2 mages didn't. They didn't really care about money, so getting paid didn't make them feel grateful. We locked up and headed home. On the road, I noticed the dragon-blooded horse kept drifting toward me rather than the chestnut mare. It wasn't interested in the mare at all. It seemed drawn to me, probably because the blood flowing through my veins now had a dragon element, making us feel like the same kind. I decided to name it. Dragon, sounded like Zhuagin in a funny way. The horse snorted, apparently accepting the name. I planned to build it a stable next to the chestnut mare. Given enough time together, maybe the mare would produce a dragon-blooded foal someday. We passed the peanut fields on the way back. The plants had turned lush and green. Jonathan marveled that my fertilizer method had actually worked. I told him this was just basic science and that we needed to teach all the people to use it going forward. This world had been farming for thousands of years without understanding fertilizer. They just rotated fields to let the soil recover. I could change that. At the castle, Robert and the servants greeted me at the gate. I was still feeling weak from all the blood I'd given for the sword, so I needed dragon meat badly. Mrs. Ellen had prepared a dragon meat dinner. I sat down and ate, feeling the strength slowly returning with each bite. I told her to make portions for the knights and both mages too. We had tons of dragon meat in the cellar packed in ice. At my rate of eating, it would last forever. As I ate, I started missing the food from my old world. In this place, it was meat on a plate every single meal. Back in China, there were 8 major cuisines with endless variety: frying, steaming, stir-frying, boiling, braising. I made a mental note to teach Mrs. Ellen some proper cooking techniques when I got the chance. I decided to eat dragon meat for a while, and once I got tired of it, I'd sell it in Mott City. Wealthy families would pay a fortune for it. After dinner, I'd mostly recovered from the blood loss. I went out to the courtyard and found Linda examining the soil. She wanted to plant the magic seed weed bought that morning right here, since the dirt was fertile. She warned me that if the plant turned out to be dangerously powerful, it might destroy my castle. I told her to go ahead. She dug a hole in the open western side of the courtyard, buried the seed, watered it, and used her wand to speed up growth. A little sprout pushed through the soil. She suggested I add some of my blood since the energy in it would help it grow faster. I went into dragon form, cut my palm, and dripped blood onto the sprout. It absorbed every drop hungrily and grew to over a meter tall in about 15 minutes. I had to cut myself several more times as the wounds kept healing, stopping only when I felt faint again. But something seemed off. The tree looked exactly like the cypress already growing in the courtyard. We stared at each other, wondering if we'd been tricked. Then a single strange leaf appeared at the very top, palm-sized, with golden veins that glowed in the moonlight. Linda's eyes went wide. She recognized it now, a sentinel tree, an extremely rare magical plant. She told me to pick the leaf and hold it over my eyes. When I did, my vision completely shifted. I was seeing through the tree's perspective. I could see myself and Linda standing there, as if looking through a camera. I could rotate the view, zoom in and out. It was like a 360-degree surveillance system with perfect clarity. The sentinel tree had no fixed appearance. It automatically copied whatever trees grew nearby, blending in perfectly. If I could plant these throughout my territory, I'd have eyes everywhere. I'd spot intruders, thieves, or dark mage spies instantly. Linda broke off a branch and stuck it in the ground nearby. She explained that branches from the mother tree could take root and grow into child trees with the same surveillance ability. As long as we protected the mother tree, we could produce endless copies to cover the entire territory. Then something unexpected happened. The tree suddenly turned completely red, grew fine scales on its trunk, and the top began glowing brighter and brighter. A soccer-sized fireball launched from it and slammed into the ground 15 meters away, blasting a meter-wide crater. The power was equal to a first-rank mage's fireball spell. Immediately after, the red faded and the tree went back to looking like an ordinary cypress, gently waving its leaves at me as if saying, "Look how cool I am, master." I looked at Linda in shock. She was equally stunned. She knew sentinel trees could camouflage, but she'd never heard of one that could attack. She said my blood must have caused it to mutate. That made me think about what grandmother had said, that the Jordan family was once powerful and prestigious centuries ago. Could there be something special in our bloodline that nobody knew about anymore? Linda planted a few more branches from the sentinel tree around the courtyard. Once they grew and developed their surveillance ability, we'd transplant them across the territory. I tested the golden-veined leaf a few more times, then stored it safely. This magic tree was definitely the best find of the day. I gave Linda the dragon eye stone early as her payment. She teased me, asking if I was worried she'd run off with it. I told her if she tried, I'd have her dragged back and make her work for me forever. We joked around for a bit, then I headed upstairs. Ruth told me the last of the dragon blood was ready for a bath. I went to the bathroom, where a full tub of red liquid waited. I undressed down to my shorts, keeping the heart-shaped pendant around my neck. The warm blood felt like a hot spring. My dragon-human form activated on its own as I sank in, and I drifted off to sleep. What I didn't know was that the heart pendant began floating above my head, glowing bright red. Blue threads spread from it, while red mist poured out. The two colors spiraled together into an energy vortex that wrapped around me. I felt myself falling, sinking through darkness into a bottomless void. Complete emptiness surrounded me. Then a white circle of light appeared ahead. I ran toward it and dove through. Suddenly, I was standing on a massive wall over 100 meters high, surrounded by soldiers in black armor. Below lay countless corpses. In the distance, an army of hundreds of thousands charged forward. Where am I? I thought. This had to be a dream, but it felt impossibly real. I watched myself draw a sword and command the troops to fight. Catapults launched flaming boulders into the charging enemy. But the army was unstoppable, a black flood of humans, enormous magical beasts taller than 3-story buildings, mammoth elephants, saber-toothed tigers, and 3-meter-tall minotaurs carrying battering rams. Then a dragon's roar echoed across the wall. An ice-blue dragon appeared, about 60 meters long, slender and elegant, clearly female. She gripped a crystal staff and pointed it at the enemy army, casting a forbidden spell, Mystic Ice Spike Formation. A blue hexagram thousands of meters wide appeared in the sky, and countless 7-meter ice spikes rained down like a storm, impaling everything below, soldiers, beasts, all of them, killing over 10,000 in minutes. Then I felt myself roar too. The world shrank around me as I transformed into an enormous red dragon, over 80 meters long, even bigger than the blue one. I called out, "Sword, come," and a massive red vortex opened above, raining fire that assembled into a 40-meter flaming sword. I grabbed it, leaped off the wall, and charged into the enemy army. Nothing could withstand a single swing. Spears and arrows felt like nothing against my scales. I cut through them like wheat. Then a woman's voice screamed, "Jordan, save me." I turned back toward the wall. 5 black dragons had appeared and were binding the blue dragon in heavy chains. In the dream, I screamed the name, Lisa, and flew toward the wall to save the blue dragon. 3 black dragons intercepted me, each wielding enormous black spears. I cut through them with devastating skill, stabbing one through the chest, then casting a forbidden spell called Blazing Sun Crescent. A tiny sun formed in the sky from merged fire and sunlight, and I channeled it into a 500-meter golden crescent blade that sliced the 2 fleeing black dragons clean in half. But before I could reach Lisa, one of the black dragons on the wall pulled out a scroll. It released a dark golden light that passed right through my defenses. Black mist seeped from between my scales and connected to a dragon head magic circle on the ground, locking me in place completely. I couldn't move a finger. The remaining black dragons chained Lisa and flew away. Her voice grew fainter and fainter. "Jordan, save me." I screamed her name in despair, but could do nothing. Then the entire enemy army retreated, faster than they'd come. The siege had been a diversion. Their real target was the blue dragon all along. Everyone, including me, had been tricked. The vision ended and I woke up gasping, drenched in sweat. It was the next morning. Every drop of dragon blood in the tub was gone, completely absorbed. I realized this wasn't just a dream. It was the memory of a red dragon named Jordan, the same as my family name. His most painful memory, watching the one he loved get taken away. My dragon human form even produced red scales, just like that red dragon. Was it really just coincidence? And what was so special about the blue dragon that the enemy had sacrificed 3 black dragons and a powerful scroll just to capture her? Too many questions with no answers. I let it go for now and checked my body. When I activated dragon form, I'd grown to over 2 meters tall, with much more muscle and 8-pack abs. My wings had grown to the size of swan wings. I flapped them and actually lifted off the ground, about 1 meter up before hitting my limit. Before, the wings could only boost my speed. Now I could actually hover. Someday, maybe I'd fly freely through the sky. I got dressed and headed to breakfast. Linda excitedly told me the mother sentinel tree had grown to 2 meters, and the first child tree was over 1 meter tall. I tested the golden leaf over my eyes. The view was much higher now, incredibly sharp. I could see the pores on a maid's face as she walked by. Then the view shifted to the child tree's perspective. The other branches were already 60 or 70 centimeters tall and would be ready for surveillance in a few days. Tina came in asking what we were doing. I told her about the sentinel tree weed grown from the magic seed. Tina grabbed the golden leaf and tried it, but couldn't see anything. I took it back, and it worked fine for me. Linda tried too. Nothing. She sighed and said she shouldn't have let me water the tree with my blood. Now only I could use the sentinel tree. Normally, anyone holding a golden leaf could access the view, and mature trees would even grow multiple leaves. But my blood had changed the rules. It was a blessing and a curse. The tree was stronger, but I was the only user. I made a mental note to be more careful about giving my blood to things in the future. I told Linda to start planting the fruit trees after breakfast. I promised her that once they bore fruit, I'd make jam, juice, and fruit wine for everyone. Her eyes lit up. Even Tina looked excited. After eating, I sent Tina to Mott City with Knight Shiloh and 3 male servants to run the snow cake business for the day. I gave them a bag of silver coins for supplies and strict instructions to follow the recipe exactly. With Tina, our strongest fighter, away, I kept Jonathan and the remaining knights at the castle for security. I pulled out a parchment map of Hopetown and planned where to plant the orchards. I picked 2 spots near water sources with open space around them for future processing workshops. Jonathan took a copper gong through the territory, announcing that all able-bodied workers should report to the castle with buckets and shovels for tree planting. Some people grumbled at first. They were worried about leaving their crops unattended with harvest just 2 months away. But someone reminded them that last time the Lord called them to dig pond mud, everyone got paid 20 copper coins. That changed their mood instantly. It struck me how much had changed in just a few days. When I first arrived, the knights had to drag people to work by force. Now over 140 workers showed up on their own within 20 minutes, the entire workforce of Hopetown. Their motivation had improved dramatically thanks to fair pay, free meals, and being treated like human beings. I climbed onto Zhuagin, my dragon-blooded horse, and called out for everyone to follow. Over 100 people marched behind me in an impressive procession. Some of them wondered why we weren't bringing saplings, but nobody dared ask. We arrived at the spot I'd chosen, over 100 acres of wasteland covered in waist-high weeds, with a lake of about 300 acres behind it. The reason this good farmland had been abandoned was a second-rank magical beast living in the lake, an iron-armored giant crocodile. Years ago, it had killed several serfs. The Jordan family had sent strong knights to hunt it, but the crocodile was too clever. It never came ashore, and its hide was too tough for ordinary arrows. The knights had given up, and the land had been useless ever since because nobody could draw water from the lake. Today, I was going to solve this problem in front of everyone. I walked to the lake's edge and tossed a small piece of pork into the water, enchanted with wind magic so it would float. A massive log-like shape drifted over, a whirlpool appeared, and the meat vanished. The crocodile was still lurking nearby. I threw the rest of the 10-pound piece onto the water and used a wind spell to keep it hovering above the surface. The crocodile couldn't resist. It exploded out of the water in a shower of spray, nearly 4 meters long, thicker than a barrel, covered in black-gray armored plates, with teeth longer than human fingers. The crowd stumbled backward in terror. Some people fell to the ground shaking. I asked Linda if she'd gotten a good look. She had. I told her to make me a giant fish hook. She planted a seed and grew a half-meter black branch that curved into a hook shape with a barb at the tip and a hole at the base, all in about 3 minutes. Then she grew a 200-meter vine as thick as a baby's arm. By the time she finished, sweat was dripping from her nose. I threaded the vine through the hook, tied a tight knot, and impaled 10 pounds of pork on it. The other end of the vine was tied to Zhuagin's back, and I had all 140 workers grab hold of the line. I cast the baited hook into the lake. Within seconds, the vine snapped tight. The crocodile had taken the bait. I shouted the count. 1, 2, 3. Pull. Everyone heaved together like a tug of war. The crocodile thrashed and fought, but over 100 people were stronger. When energy started flagging, I announced 30 copper coins per person as a reward. Everyone pulled harder. When they slowed again, I raised it to 50 copper. That was like injecting pure adrenaline. They hauled with everything they had. We dragged the crocodile a full kilometer from the lake, plowing a deep trench in the ground. Once I was sure it couldn't escape back to the water, I raised my hand and shouted, "Attack!" Jonathan and the 3 knights charged in and stabbed at the crocodile, but their swords just sparked off its armored hide. Only Jonathan, as a third-rank knight, barely scratched the surface. Then the crocodile swung its tail, thick as a man's waist, and even with all 4 knights blocking together, they were pushed back over a dozen steps. The clever beast stopped struggling and suddenly charged at the crowd of workers. Everyone panicked and let go of the vine, scattering in every direction. The crocodile grinned and turned toward the lake. Showdown alone couldn't hold it. I had to admire its intelligence. I activated my dragon-human form, grabbed my sword, and rocketed toward it like a red blur. I formed a half-meter fireball and slammed it into the crocodile's head. The explosion scorched the ground into glass around the impact zone. The crocodile stopped in its tracks. When the flames cleared, its head was blackened and smoking. It turned around furiously and fired 5 water arrows at me. I dodged 2, sliced one apart with my sword, and destroyed the other 2 with fireballs. Every attack neutralized. Then it charged at me with its massive jaws wide open. That was actually what I wanted. As long as it was chasing me, it wasn't running to the lake. Showdown galloped underneath me, and I landed on his back. I swung my sword and sent a blade of aura straight into the crocodile's open mouth, shredding its tongue. It howled and rolled on the ground in agony. I noticed something important. Its belly wasn't armored like the rest of its body. The underside was pale yellow and soft-looking. That was its weak point. I sent Jonathan and the knights to block the path to the lake while I switched to a kiting strategy, keeping my distance on Showdown, who was many times faster than the clumsy reptile on land. The crocodile's only ranged attack was the water arrows, and those were on cooldown. I cast a wind tornado that lifted the crocodile 4 or 5 meters into the air, exposing its belly. Then I fired 7 or 8 wind blades into its soft underside. Blood poured from the wounds, staining the ground red. From the distance, my people erupted in roars of encouragement. Some of them had lost family members to this very crocodile and had given up hope of revenge. Today, for the first time, they could see justice was possible. The crocodile gave up fighting and tried to crawl back to the lake, leaving a trail of blood behind it. Jonathan and the knights formed a defensive wall with a silver aura barrier, 2 meters high and over 10 meters wide. The crocodile slammed into it headfirst and staggered backward, dazed. It tried to go around, but Jonathan shifted to stay in front. It fired 5 water arrows, but they barely rippled the barrier. A third-rank knight plus 3 first-rank knights could easily tank a wounded second-rank beast. I gathered my aura into a silver dragon coiling around my body. 18 dragon-subduing palms. The dragon dove under the crocodile and flipped it over, exposing its soft belly. Showdown and I shot forward at full speed, 150 kilometers per hour, and I drove my sword up through the crocodile's jaw, straight through its skull, the blade tip poking out the top of its head. Showdown carried me another 200 meters before we slowed to a stop. The iron-armored giant crocodile lay on its back, dead. 30 reputation points from the kill, plus 80 more from the watching crowd. But the biggest moment came next. I rode Showdown to the carcass with sunlight on my face and announced to everyone that the beast was dead, the land was ours again, and I was treating everyone to crocodile meat for lunch. Every single person cheered and gave me reputation, 140 points total. This had been my real goal, killing the monster publicly so everyone could see their lord's strength and feel grateful. Then I pulled all the fruit tree saplings from my spatial ring. The workers dug holes, planted them, and carried water from the lake. Linda followed behind with her wand, magically accelerating each sapling's growth. Leaves sprouted and trunks stretched as if years had passed in seconds. I organized everything by type: apple orchard, pear orchard, orange grove, and vineyard. The grapes were the most work. I had to cut down over 40 trees from a nearby forest to build trellises, bound together with vines Linda grew. By the time we finished, all the saplings were planted across over 40 acres. Linda looked pale from using so much magic. I pulled her up onto Showdown and told everyone to grab their bowls and head to the castle for meat. Back at the castle, the smell of cooking crocodile meat filled the air. Jonathan presented me with the beast's magic core, a peach-sized, water-blue sphere. The crocodile skin had been fully peeled off too. I nodded approvingly. Not a bad haul for a morning's work. Linda and I went inside the courtyard where the crocodile skin was drying on the stone table. I folded it up and stored it in my spatial ring. I gave Robert a big bag of coins and told him to pay each worker 50 copper when they came for lunch. The workers lined up orderly for their bowls of crocodile meat soup. Robert sat by the line, handing out silver coins to pairs of family members. Every person who received payment gave me 2 reputation points, 280 points total from 140 people. Linda and I went upstairs to the dining room. I sat by the window watching my people outside. They'd sit in small groups, sipping soup and clutching their silver coins with satisfied smiles. I tried the soup myself and grimaced. It was fishy and barely salted. Kalina rushed in to add salt, then left with Ruth. Then I heard a groan beside me. Linda had collapsed backward. I caught her and held her up. Massive waves of life energy were radiating from her body, spreading in all directions. Outside, the sentinel trees shot up dramatically, and flowers and grass burst from the sandy ground everywhere, carpeting the earth in green. But Linda was in bad shape. Her eyes were shut tight, her face twisted in pain, and her body was swelling like a balloon. I had no idea what was happening and wished Tina were here. There was nothing I could do. She screamed that it hurt, then suddenly bit down hard on my hand. My blood dripped into her mouth, and her eyes snapped open with a strange glow. Before I could ask what was wrong, she threw her arms around my neck and pressed her lips against mine. Energy poured from her mouth into me, incredibly pure and powerful. My dragon-human form activated on its own. Linda's swollen body gradually returned to normal as the energy flowed out of her and into me. We stayed locked together, neither of us pulling away. I don't know how long it lasted. When the energy finally stopped, we broke apart, gasping for air. Linda's face was flushed deep red. My dragon form had grown significantly. 2 meters 20 tall now, with denser and thicker scales, more developed muscles, and wings nearly 2 meters wide, big enough to actually fly with. I asked what had happened. She explained that as a child, she'd accidentally eaten something called a dragon tongue fruit containing enormous energy. Her teacher had sealed it inside her just in time to save her life. Today, she'd used too much magic planting the trees, which triggered a stress reaction that cracked the seal. The energy had started leaking out uncontrollably. By kissing me and transferring the energy, the threat was gone. She couldn't feel the dragon tongue fruit's power inside her anymore. It was a win for both of us. She was free of a ticking time bomb, and my dragon form had gotten a major upgrade. I checked my pocket watch. It was already 3 in the afternoon. We'd been locked together for nearly 3 hours. She mumbled that she was tired and practically fled to her room. I watched her go, then licked my lips. In 2 lifetimes, I'd never kissed a girl before. That was my first kiss. I stretched and went downstairs. The sentinel trees had all grown significantly. The mother tree was 2 meters tall, and all 6 child trees were over a meter. I tested the golden leaf and confirmed every child tree now had surveillance capability. I needed to transplant them to key locations across the territory soon. It was time to check on my dragon fong sword. I called Zhuagin, mounted up, and told Jonathan I was going to Mott City alone. He protested it was dangerous, but I patted Zhuagin's neck and said danger couldn't catch me. We took off in a cloud of dust and reached the city in under 30 minutes at 160 kilometers per hour. On the way in, I ran into Shiloh and Tina's group heading home. They'd sold 200 snow cakes, decent money, but only 30 reputation points. The novelty was wearing off fast. I definitely needed new products soon. I gave each person a bonus and sent them home. At the Viscount Manor, Brent was already waiting outside the forge. He wanted to see the dragon fong sword too. We knocked on the iron door and Green let us in quietly. Daniel was at his anvil, aura blazing, hammering the blade with precise strikes. On the forging platform lay a pale white sword that looked like it was carved from jade, a true work of art. The blade was about 1 meter 20 long and 3 fingers wide. The guard was shaped like 2 outward-pointing fangs. With one final strike, brilliant light erupted from the blade, flooding the entire forge. Then a rainbow beam shot from the sword straight through the ceiling, blasting a half-meter hole. Through it we could see blue sky. A dragon phantom over 10 meters long rose into the air above us, opened its jaws, and let out a roar so powerful it shook the entire city like a small earthquake. Then the phantom turned into a streak of light and sank back into the blade. The sword flew to me on its own, handle first, and hovered in front of me. I grabbed it. The grip felt cool and comfortable. Inside my mind, I could sense the sword spirit's thoughts, cheeky and mischievous. Every time I swung the blade, it let out a deafening dragon roar. Daniel was weeping with joy, saying this was the greatest weapon he'd ever forged. The roar had a soul-shaking effect that could stun enemies in combat, and even if a strong opponent could resist it, constant roaring right in their face would drive them crazy. Green presented a light, gray scabbard carved with a silver dragon in flight. I loved it. Daniel asked me to name the sword. I thought about the roar it made with every swing and decided, Dragon's Howl. The sword trembled slightly in approval. Then I pulled out a section of dragon skin and over 100 dragon scales from my spatial ring and asked Daniel to forge me a suit of armor. Brent stood there looking numb. He'd run out of ways to be shocked. Daniel's eyes lit up as he ran his hands over the scales and said it would be his pleasure. Green started measuring me for the armor, height, shoulders, waist. Daniel laid the dragon skin and scales out on the forging platform in a rough human shape. Then something unexpected happened again. A cold aura arose from the dragon skin, and another dragon phantom appeared, glaring at me with hatred and roaring. A second dragon soul. This one had been hiding in the skin. Dragon's Howl unsheathed itself automatically, its sword spirit floating out to face the new phantom. They looked almost identical, but the sword spirit was more solid. One had already accepted me as master, the other still hated me. Brent looked at me with envy and asked why all the good things happened to me. I told him it was called main character energy. I activated my dragon human form to give blood again. Everyone stared. I'd grown dramatically since yesterday, now standing at 2 meters 20. Brent complained that one day apart, and I'd changed this much. They didn't know about the dragon blood bath and the energy I'd absorbed from Linda. Green brought me a cup, but I shook my head. Too small. He came back with a bucket. I cut my wrist with Dragon's Howl and bled out over 10 liters before feeling faint. My enhanced body could handle far more blood loss now. Green poured it evenly over the dragon's skin. The blood absorbed instantly, and the phantom's expression shifted between anger and warmth, just like the first soul had. Eventually, the hatred faded, replaced by calm acceptance. It sank back into the skin. The sword spirit returned to Dragon's Howl. Then I pulled out the crocodile skin and asked Green to make me some shoes. Brent couldn't believe I'd killed the iron-armored crocodile. Then he realized I was using second-rank beast leather just for footwear and called me extravagant, until he remembered I had dragon skin for real armor. He asked if he could have the leftover crocodile skin for his own armor. I told him 12 gold coins. He protested that we were brothers. I said brothers settle accounts clearly. After some haggling, I threatened to sell it to Howard's family for 15 gold. He caved and paid 12. I also offered him the crocodile's water magic core, since it conflicted with my fire-aligned dragon form. 15 gold coins. He called me a robber, but when I mentioned selling it to his rivals instead, he agreed instantly. He'd pay tomorrow when I came to pick up the dragon scale armor. Green measured my feet for the shoes and assured me there was plenty of crocodile skin. Enough for 2 full sets of armor plus extra shoes. Brent would get his armor. I'd get my 5 pairs of shoes, and maybe even 2 more pairs from the leftover material. Brent insisted Green make him 2 full sets of armor and use whatever was left for his own shoes. I didn't argue. 5 pairs was plenty for me. I headed out with Dragon's Howl in hand. For some reason, the sword spirit refused to go into the spatial ring and insisted I carry it. Outside the forge, a crowd had gathered. Father, Uncle Fred, Plato, and every house guard. The dragon roar earlier had alarmed the entire estate. Father asked what happened. I told him straight. I'd had a dragon fong sword forged, and the sword spirit made a scene. Plato sneered, suggesting it was a real dragon coming for revenge. I unsheathed Dragon's Howl and swung it a few times. Every swing released a thundering dragon roar that nearly deafened everyone. Father's eyes burned with desire. He actually tried to sweet-talk me into handing it over, claiming I was too young to handle it. I told him the sword was quenched with my blood. The spirit would only ever recognize me. His face fell. Then I mentioned I'd killed the iron-armored crocodile and sold the skin to Brent for armor. Father and Uncle Fred were stunned. Uncle Fred, a 4th-rank knight, had led a whole squad against that crocodile years ago and failed. When I pointed out that Brent was probably already having armor fitted, Father vanished in a blur, smashing through the forge door to claim his share. Outside the manor gates, hundreds of people had gathered, the city's most important nobles and merchants. The two other Viscount family's leaders were there, demanding to know about the dragon roar. I played dumb, pretending to be a scared kid who'd run out when he heard the noise. They bought it and pushed past me to find Father. As I squeezed through the crowd, a blond young man grabbed my shoulder. He smiled and said my sword looked unusual. I brushed him off, calling it ordinary, and left quickly. Behind me, I heard the blonde woman with him ask what he'd noticed. He said it was a dragon fong sword. Outside the city, I released Zhuagin and rode hard toward home. Then an arrow came whistling at me. I drew Dragon's Howl and sliced it out of the air. Zhuagin stumbled over a hidden rope on the ground, though he didn't fall. Two men who'd been holding the rope were yanked out of their hiding spots. They couldn't stop a dragon-blooded horse. 8 figures emerged from the bushes. Their leader was a short, fat man about 1.40 meters tall. Beside him was a man with a hideous scar across his entire face. Scarface had a high-pitched voice and pointed out my noble clothing, my valuable horse with scales, and suggested I'd fetch a nice ransom. The fat leader grinned and made a disgusting suggestion about keeping me for their entertainment. They formed a circle around Zhuagin and me, 2 second-rank knights and 6 first-rank knights total. I let out a cold laugh and asked them if they really thought that was enough to rob me. Scarface taunted me, calling me a kid who didn't know what he was getting into. One of the first-rank knights swaggered toward me with a disgusting threat. I didn't bother with words. I charged on Zhuagin. Dragon's Howl roared as I swung, and the man's head flew off his shoulders. One strike, instant kill. That got their attention. The fat leader ordered everyone to attack at once. 7 men drew their weapons and rushed me from all sides. I fired a lightning bolt through Dragon's Howl straight into Scarface. The Dragon Fong sword conducted magic even better than a regular wand. The bolt was as thick as a baby's arm. Scarface went into convulsions. The fat man barely saved his partner by deflecting my follow-up thrust, then kicked at Zhuagin's belly. Zhuagin reared up and kicked back, pushing the fat man several steps. Then Zhuagin fired a fireball from his forehead right into the fat man's face. While he was blinded and crying from the burns, I swung Dragon's Howl at his head. Only his battlefield instincts saved him. He ducked just in time, the blade whistling over his scalp. The fat leader screamed for everyone to use their battle skills. All 7 attacked with named techniques. I felt my blood boil with fighting spirit. Dragon human form. I tossed my shirt into the spatial ring as my body surged to 2.20 meters, covered in red scales, dragon wings spreading wide behind me. Dragon's Howl extended a meter-long energy blade that matched my new size perfectly. I beat my wings and flew up, gathering fire elements at the sword's tip. Exploding fireball, a 1.20 meter fireball, formed instantly, far more powerful than anything I'd produced before, thanks to 2 upgrades to my dragon form plus Dragon's Howl's superior magic conductivity. I launched it into the middle of Scarface's sword dance technique. The fireball shattered into dozens of burning fragments that scattered everywhere, interrupting 6 of the 7 fighters at once. Their battle skills were broken. Scarface had to retreat with burned hair and scorched skin all over his face and body. Only the fat leader made it through. I flew at him and swung Dragon's Howl upward. Our weapons collided with a thundering clang, sending visible shockwaves rippling through the air and flattening the surrounding grass. He stumbled back over a dozen steps, completely stunned. He was one of the strongest second-rank knights around, yet I was overpowering him. He was already regretting picking this fight, but it was too late to negotiate. With Zhuagin's speed, they couldn't even run. I fired lightning at him. He dodged by rolling sideways, but before he could get up, Dragon's Howl was already thrusting at him. Every strike targeted a vital point. He blocked desperately, sweating and barely surviving each exchange. Scarface shouted for the others to go help their leader. Then a red blur streaked past him, followed by a horrible scream. Scarface turned and saw that Zhuagin had gored one of his men with his horns, tossing him 100 meters through the air with a hole ripped through his stomach. Scarface charged at Zhuagin in a rage, but the horse simply sprinted away. At 200 kilometers per hour, nobody could keep up. Scarface chased him for a mile before giving up, gasping for breath. Then he realized he'd left his leader alone with me and ran back. Meanwhile, the fat leader was barely surviving. Dragon's Howl's constant roaring had nearly deafened him, crippling his ability to sense danger. He was covered in wounds, blood soaking his clothes. I unleashed 3 spells in a row: lightning, wind vortex, and an exploding fireball. Scarface arrived just in time and threw up a 3-meter aura barrier. My lightning cracked it, the wind expanded the cracks, and the fireball shattered it completely, sending both of them tumbling. From the distance came screams. Zhuagin was playing with one of the knights, tossing him into the air with his horns, catching him, tossing him again, then finally stomping his head. He was firing fireballs at the other 3 knights to keep them back. The survivors broke and ran in every direction. The fat man and Scarface looked at each other and bolted too. I flew up on my wings and formed a silver aura dragon. 18 dragon subduing palms. The dragon crashed down on both of them, blasting a crater 100 meters wide and 3 feet deep. I dove down and drove Dragon's Howl through Scarface's chest. He died instantly. The fat man went berserk, abandoning all defense to swing his blade at me in a suicide exchange. I fired a lightning arc at his wrist. His weapon dropped. Dragon's Howl pierced his heart, the blade erupting from his back. His body slid down the sword and split apart. Zhuagin caught and killed another fleeing knight. I flew after the last 2 myself. One thought he'd escaped. Then my sword took his head before he even heard me coming. The other heard hoofbeats behind him and ran harder, only to find Zhuagin suddenly in front of him. A hoof to the skull ended it. I flicked the blood off Dragon's Howl. The blade was spotless. Zhuagin could have outrun all of them easily, but this was the road to my home. I would never allow bandits on the path to Hope Town. I sheathed my sword, climbed back on Zhuagin, put my clothes back on, and headed home. After I left, the blonde man and woman from the city arrived on horseback. The woman rode an impressive beast, a blue-scaled horse with a rainbow tail and a single horn like a rhinoceros. The young man inspected the scene and the bodies. He noted the wounds were clean and precise, made by an extremely sharp weapon, with burn and paralysis marks confirming the attacker was a magic warrior. Only 1 set of human footprints plus deep hoofprints from an exceptional mount. His sister asked if the horse was better than her rare blue-scaled unicorn horse. He laughed and said it was many, many times better. After I left, those 2 blonde siblings investigated the battlefield. The young man, Duel, figured out everything from the evidence. The clean sword wounds, the burn and paralysis marks from a magic warrior, only 1 set of human footprints, and deep hoofprints from an exceptional mount. He deduced that 4 of the 8 bandits had been killed by the horse alone, making it comparable to a peak first-rank knight in combat power, with speed around 200 kilometers per hour, double the woman's prized blue-scale horse. The woman, Manda, couldn't believe it. Duel suggested it was me, Chris Jordan, with a dragon fong sword. Manda refused to believe it. She remembered me as a snotty little kid who used to chase after her yelling, "Manda, wait for me." She couldn't connect that child with someone capable of killing 2 second-rank knights and 6 first-rank knights alone. They made a bet. They'd stake out the road to Mott City, and if I showed up riding an extraordinary mount, Duel won and got to borrow her blue-scale horse for a month. If not, Manda won and got his treasured mystic iron ore for forging a sword. She agreed confidently, certain I couldn't have grown that strong in 6 months. By the time I got home, it was fully dark. The fight with the bandits had cost me too much time. Jonathan smelled blood on me and asked what happened. I told him it was nothing, just some roadside bandits I'd dealt with. He offered to accompany me in the future, but I turned him down. He'd only slow me down. Tina met me inside and asked what had happened between me and Linda. Apparently Linda had locked herself in her room and refused to come out since I'd arrived. I licked my lips and said to give her a couple of days. Then Tina shared some good news. Linda had advanced to 3rd-rank mage. That was huge. A 3rd-rank plant mage would dramatically speed up everything in my orchards and farmland. It made sense, though, when the dragon tongue fruit energy leaked out. She would have absorbed some of it herself. I went to the dining room, starving. Mrs. Ellen brought out the usual, a dragon meat steak. I stared at it and grimaced. After days of nothing but plain meat on a plate, I was sick of it. I stood up, walked into the kitchen, and decided it was time to teach Mrs. Ellen how to cook real food from my previous life. Chinese cuisine had 8 major styles. Any one of them could fill a feast. Eating bland steaks every day was barbaric. The servants panicked at seeing a noble in the kitchen. Robert was summoned to protest, but I stopped him before he could speak. I told Mrs. Ellen I'd cook and she'd watch and learn. Once she mastered it, I'd stop coming. I picked up the jars and bottles on the counter, sniffing each one to identify the seasonings. The selection was pitiful compared to my old world. Just oil, salt, pepper, and cumin. But it was a start. I rolled up my sleeves and started cooking. I cut pork into small pieces and tossed them into the oil pan. When the meat turned white, I added chopped cabbage. Mrs. Ellen was horrified. Cabbage was servant food, and nobles only ate meat. I ignored her and kept stir-frying. Everyone watched in stunned silence. They'd never seen a noble cook before, let alone with techniques completely foreign to this world. As the food sizzled, the aroma drifted out of the kitchen. Ruth and Kalina were practically drooling. I made pork stewed with cabbage, beef stewed with potatoes, pepper stir-fried pork, and scrambled eggs with tomatoes. I wished I could do more, but my stomach was growling too loudly. I whittled 2 straight sticks into chopsticks with dragon's howl, washed them, and sat down to eat. The flavors were solid. My cooking skills hadn't faded one bit. I made Mrs. Ellen taste the food. She resisted at first, thinking it was wrong for a servant to eat what her lord cooked. I pushed the spoon into her hand and told her she needed to learn these recipes so she could make them for me later. One bite, and her eyes lit up. Every dish earned me 2 reputation points from her. I called the maids in to try it too. They were amazed. Every one of them gave me 2 reputation points. Tina quietly slipped in and tasted it as well, earning me 2 more. I asked about Linda. Tina said she was still hiding in her room. I told Tina to bring the pork and cabbage to Linda's door. That would get her out. Sure enough, when Linda smelled it and heard it was something I'd cooked personally, she cracked open her door. One bite, and the little food lover was hooked. Tina lured her to the dining room with the promise of more dishes. Linda sat as far from me as possible, head down, not saying a word. I told her to eat. She cautiously tried a piece of beef and looked up with shining eyes. 2 more reputation points. I didn't push things, I just focused on my own food. I was starving. Tina noticed my chopsticks and asked what they were. She and Linda had been struggling with spoons, spilling food everywhere, while I was picking up even tiny crumbs of meat without dropping a single piece. I told them chopsticks were something I'd learned from a foreign merchant last year, almost slipping and saying, past life. I handed them each a pair I'd already prepared. They fumbled at first, but as mages with strong mental focus, they got the hang of it within 5 minutes. Linda picked up a piece of potato and said through a full mouth that chopsticks were definitely better than knives and forks. That night, I had the most satisfying meal since arriving in this world. The 4 plates were licked clean by the 3 of us. I went to bed exhausted. After I left the dining room, Tina cornered Linda and squeezed the whole story out of her. The dragon tongue fruit, the energy leak, biting my hand, drinking my blood, and the 3-hour kiss. Linda was mortified. Tina teased her about being so forward and joked that since my blood made the sentinel tree loyal to me alone, maybe drinking it had made Linda fall for me too. Linda insisted that was ridiculous. She wasn't a plant. But she couldn't explain why she'd kissed me. The next morning, I sent Tina and Shiloh to Mott City with the servants to sell snow cake, as usual. Then I gathered all the workers again. Today's job was building processing sheds near the orchard, 10 buildings with a large stove for making fruit jam once the harvest came in. I had them cut down trees and start construction while the administrator Randall recorded everything. Linda was out with her wand, casting growth spells on the fruit trees one by one. The saplings planted just yesterday had already grown noticeably bigger, with thick leaves and some even blooming flowers. I used wind magic to scatter the pollen for artificial pollination. At this rate, we'd have fruit in 5 days, something that would normally take a year or 2. Then a man shouted from the lake shore that he'd found a huge egg, melon-sized and oval. Before I could react, jaws burst from the water and dragged him under. Another iron-armored crocodile. I sprinted to the lake with dragon's howl drawn. The water was bubbling with blood. I spotted the target and hurled my sword into the water. Moments later, the man surfaced. I went into dragon form, flew out over the lake, grabbed him, and tossed him to shore. Saving his life earned me 60 reputation points. He passed out immediately. He had bite marks, was in shock, and had lost a lot of blood. His friends rushed him away for treatment. Dragon's Howl flew back to my hand from the water. This crocodile was much smaller and weaker than yesterday's, probably just a first-rank beast. And given the egg, this one was female. The big one I'd killed yesterday must have been her mate. The Jordan family's headache had apparently been a married couple. I fired lightning into the lake, but while plenty of fish floated up belly up, the mother crocodile was nowhere to be seen. I realized electrifying the whole lake would ruin the fish population, so I decided to go in myself. I dropped into the water. In dragon form, 2 small whiskers grew from my nostrils that let me breathe underwater. Yesterday's crocodile had been second rank, too risky to dive after alone. But this one was only first rank. I could handle it easily. I opened my eyes underwater and could see everything clearly. Small fish darted past me in panic. I kept diving deeper. The mother crocodile had probably retreated to her den at the bottom. The lake bottom was dim and murky. I gripped Dragon's Howl tightly, cutting through water weeds as I descended. The lake was about 100 meters deep. After 4 or 5 minutes of searching, I found her. At the bottom, there was a nest made of water plants and lily pads, about 7 or 8 meters across. The mother crocodile was curled up inside with a wound on her back from my earlier sword throw, still bleeding. Around her were over a dozen white eggs floating gently in the current, a nursery for future baby crocodiles. She was much smaller than her mate, only 2.5 meters long and quite slender. When she spotted me, she raised her head with a fierce look. I charged at her with Dragon's Howl. I sent a whirlwind from the sword tip that turned into an underwater vortex, spinning her body out of control. While she was disoriented, I sliced her soft belly open. Her combat ability was nothing compared to yesterday's male. I'd struggled against him even with Jonathan's help. This one I could handle alone without breaking a sweat. But I needed to hurry. My dragon form only lasted about 10 minutes now after 2 upgrades. I attacked relentlessly. Dragon's Howl was sharp enough to cut through even her armored hide. Within minutes, she lost all ability to fight back. Up on shore, Jonathan and the others had been watching the lake anxiously, seeing red blood float to the surface. Linda covered her eyes, afraid to look. Then the mother crocodile's massive body burst out of the water and crashed onto the bank, covered in wounds and barely alive. I flew out after her, landing gently without a scratch. The crowd cheered, and my reputation climbed by another dozen points or so. My total was now 1,710, just 290 away from 2,000 and the breakthrough to second-rank magic warrior. I casually said to prepare for skinning. Then Linda stopped me and asked if I'd found any eggs. I told her I'd brought all of them up, joking about reuniting the family on the dinner table. But Linda had a much better idea. Why not put the mother and eggs back in the lake and breed crocodiles? The lake was big enough to serve as a crocodile farm. Whenever I wanted crocodile meat or leather for shoes, I'd just catch one. Jonathan pointed out that nobody would dare fetch water from a lake full of crocodiles. I already had a solution. Dig a narrow channel from the shore to the lake, 1 meter wide, 2 meters deep, 30 meters long. The workers could draw water safely from the channel. The mother crocodile was too big to fit inside it, and her cautious nature meant she'd never venture 30 meters from the lake. Then Jonathan pointed out a problem I hadn't considered. The mother crocodile was nearly dead. I'd been planning to skin her, so I hadn't held back at all. She was barely breathing. I panicked and asked Linda for a healing plant. She pulled out a tiny green seed from her pouch, planted it, and grew a meter-tall plant with 4 fist-sized green pods full of liquid. We picked the pods, squeezed out the cool green medicine, and smeared it all over the crocodile's worst wounds. Linda grew 7 or 8 more plants, and we used every drop on the dying beast. After about 15 minutes of treatment, thick green paste covered her body, and she was finally stabilized. I had Linda bind her with tough vines just in case she woke up aggressive. I had the workers dig 2 channels from the shore to the lake, 1 meter wide, over 2 meters deep, and 30 meters long. Once the mother crocodile recovered, I untied her and put her back in the lake along with all her eggs. I watched her carefully carry each egg down to the bottom. The crocodile farm was officially in business. The orchard construction continued all day. I fed the workers lunch again and kept them going through the afternoon. But reputation from the workers had dropped to only 80 points today. People get used to things, and gratitude fades. Same thing was happening with Snow Cake in Mott City. Around 3 in the afternoon, I rode Zhuagin toward Mott City. On the way, I burned the bandits' bodies that were still lying on the road. As I approached the city, I spotted 2 riders coming toward me, a blonde brother and sister on horseback. The White family twins, Duel and Manda. In the old Chris's memories, Manda had been his dream girl since childhood. He used to follow her everywhere, and before his coming-of-age ceremony, he'd even begged his father to propose marriage to the White family. Father refused, saying Chris wasn't worthy of her. She was a third-rank knight, one of the strongest in her generation, while Chris had been just an ordinary person with no battle aura. Every time he traveled hours to Mott City to see her, she'd slam the door in his face. But I wasn't that lovesick puppy anymore. Duel greeted me warmly. I responded coldly. What do you want? Manda frowned. She was used to the old Chris fawning over her, not this indifference. Duel complimented Zhuagin, clearly checking whether he'd won his bet with Manda. Then without warning, Manda drew her sword and charged at me. I pulled Dragon's Howl from my ring and blocked with the scabbard. The collision sent sparks flying. The recoil surprised her. She hadn't expected this kind of strength from me. I shoved her back and asked what she was doing. She attacked again. I drew Dragon's Howl, and its roar shook the air. Both siblings' faces changed. They hadn't expected a sword with special effects. I struck first with lightning through Dragon's Howl. She blocked with her metal sword. Bad move. The current paralyzed her and even shocked her blue-scale horse underneath her. Zhuagin charged in and gored the horse's neck with his horns, punching 2 bleeding holes. Manda was thrown off as her mount collapsed. I followed up with 3 wind blades. She sliced them apart, but Zhuagin spun and kicked her with his hind legs. She blocked with her sword flat, but the impact sent her sliding back over 10 meters, carving trenches in the ground. I fired a fireball. She drove her sword into the ground and raised a circular aura shield called Holy Light Barrier. The fireball splashed against it, buying her a moment to breathe. Then she poured everything into her sword and announced a battle skill. Void Flash. From the distance, Duel screamed. Are you crazy? Manda's killing intent locked onto me like a cage. The sword energy tore up everything around us. This was the real power of a third-rank knight, the pressure of death itself. I activated my dragon human form, pushed my focus to its absolute peak, and launched everything I had. 18 dragon subduing palms. A silver dragon coiled around me. Exploding fireball. A massive fireball formed at Dragon's Howl's tip, drawing fire elements from 200 meters around. Manda pulled her sword from the ground. Her golden hair floated upward as dark energy wrapped around the blade like a void. She slashed, sending a black crescent of terrifying power at me. I released the aura dragon carrying the fireball to meet it head-on. The collision was catastrophic. Fire rained from the sky. The ground cracked in every direction, and dust filled the air. My dragon and fireball shattered, but her black crescent kept coming, though much weaker now. I flew up to keep Zhuagin safe, poured every last drop of aura and magic into a layered shield, and braced for impact. The shield cracked, splintered, and broke apart. Dragon's Howl flicked upward and scattered the last trace of the attack. But I was completely drained. Dragon form collapsed. My clothes disintegrated, leaving me in nothing but stretchy shorts. Duel couldn't believe I'd survived. Manda screamed and covered her eyes, her face turning bright red. She'd gotten an eyeful of me in my underwear. I pulled spare clothes from my ring, told them to stop bothering me, and rode off on Zhuagin. Reflecting on the fight, I could clearly see the gap between me and a third-rank knight. I dominated early by catching her off guard, but once she got serious, I was outmatched. Blocking her final attack had emptied my entire reserves, while she still had energy to spare. I needed to reach second rank as soon as possible. Later, Duel asked Manda how much power she'd used. 8 out of 10, more than the 7 she usually used sparring with him. He was shaken. Manda, meanwhile, was fixated on something else entirely, the way I'd looked at her. The old Chris had worshipped her. Now there wasn't a trace of affection in my eyes. I headed to the Viscount Manor to check on my armor. In the forge, Brent was admiring himself in a mirror wearing his new crocodile skin armor. He bragged that even his sharpest sword could only scratch it without battle aura. I responded with minimal enthusiasm. Green brought me my first pair of crocodile skin shoes. They fit perfectly, smooth and comfortable, like a foot massage. I bounced around testing them. The other 4 pairs were ready on a rack nearby. Brent complained bitterly that father had barged in yesterday and demanded crocodile skin armor too. With father's large build, it used up most of the remaining leather. Brent lost his second suit of armor and couldn't even get a pair of shoes out of the deal. Brent accused me of telling father about the crocodile skin. I dodged the question and suggested we go check on my dragon scale armor. We walked to Daniel's private forge. Inside, he was finishing the final touches. The armor had taken shape, dark gray with an ancient, elegant look. With the last hammer strike, a red glow washed over it. A dragon soul phantom rose from the armor with a deep roar, and the entire suit transformed to fiery red with scale-like patterns on the surface, radiating heat. I felt the armor calling my name. When I touched it, it broke apart into countless tiny red pieces that flew onto my body and reassembled themselves into a perfect fit. Brent shouted that it looked incredible. His crocodile armor suddenly seemed plain by comparison. The armor was incredibly light. I couldn't even feel its weight. The dragon skin had great flexibility too. When I shifted into dragon human form, the armor grew with me. No more shredding my clothes every time I transformed. Then I tested its defense by slashing it with Dragon's Howl. The sword only left a white scratch mark, which vanished within seconds, as if it had never existed. I tried again, even adding battle aura. Same result, any damage healed itself almost immediately. Daniel slapped his forehead in excitement and declared the armor had a special effect, self-repair. Everyone in the room gasped. Self-healing armor was unheard of on the entire continent. In battle, your opponent's armor gets damaged while yours stays pristine. That's an insane advantage. Brent's eyes burned with envy. Daniel asked me to name it. I called it Unbreakable. The armor spirit acknowledged the name with a subtle vibration, thankfully much calmer than Dragon's Howl's dramatic entrance. When I wore Unbreakable and held Dragon's Howl together, I could feel energy circulating between them and flowing into my body, subtly improving my constitution. I thanked Daniel and left. He hinted that if I had more dragon materials, I should bring them for forging. Brent nearly tripped hearing that. Walking through Mott City, the stench hit me. No public toilets meant people relieved themselves in every hidden corner. Even the capital had this problem outside the inner city. I made a silent promise that if I ever built my own city, it would be clean and civilized. Then the blonde twins appeared again. Duel complimented my new armor. I said one word, goodbye, and walked away. These two had been following me around like glue for days. After I left, Manda asked Duel what he'd noticed about my armor. He told her it was made from dragon skin and dragon scales. Manda had no idea what she was in for. She'd already lost their bet, and once her blue scale horse healed, Duel would be riding it for a full month. Over the next few days, I supervised the orchard construction. I spent over 50 silver coins sending knights to buy large quantities of sugar and empty wine jars for making and storing fruit jam. With 140 workers, the processing sheds were built quickly. The fruit trees had all matured thanks to Linda's magic. Red apples and golden pears hung heavy on the branches. Purple grapes covered the trellises, and sweet-smelling oranges filled the air further out. Reputation gains had slowed, only 50 points over 4 days. But once the jam was ready, that would change. I started with a test batch. I had the workers pick 100 apples, peel and core them, and dice them into small pieces. I put the chunks in a big pot with 5 pounds of sugar and a little water, then cooked them over a fire. I skimmed the foam, watched the apples carefully, and added another 5 pounds of sugar when they turned nearly transparent. Then I used a small wind spell to stir the mixture into a smooth paste. The sweet and sour aroma filled the entire shed. Linda was practically drooling beside me. I ladled the hot jam into 10 jars and let them cool. Linda couldn't wait. She blew on a spoonful and ate it. Her eyes lit up, and she said it was amazing. She ate an entire jar on her own and still wanted more. Jonathan and the knights tried it too, and their eyes went wide. Everyone gave me 2 reputation points. The jam was a success. I wrote down the recipe and process. It was simple enough that ordinary people could learn it in half a day. just proper sugar ratios and heat control. I had Randall select a dozen smart workers, and I demonstrated the method repeatedly until they mastered it. For the stirring step, I replaced the magic with a wooden stick so anyone could do it. These workers would become the core team, training others to form multiple production lines. This would be Hopetown's signature industry. It would help my people earn a living and generate steady reputation for me. Later that day, Brent showed up at the castle looking for me. Mrs. Ellen directed him to the orchard. On his walk through Hopetown, he was struck by how different things looked. Children ran around laughing and playing, their cheeks rosy and healthy. They weren't afraid of a noble stranger, a huge change from 6 months ago, when the kids would hide behind their parents at the sight of any outsider. He stopped 2 elderly men coming back from the fields and asked why everyone seemed so happy. They told him it was all thanks to me. I was paying every worker 50 copper coins a day for orchard work. In just a few days, a family could earn over a month's worth of food, and I'd promised there would be work every day going forward. Brent was genuinely puzzled. Other nobles never paid their workers, and even the generous ones barely offered 10 copper. He couldn't understand why I was spending so much on common people. Brent arrived at the orchard looking for me. He'd been puzzled walking through Hopetown. Everything had changed since his visit 6 months ago. Children played fearlessly around strangers, their cheeks rosy and healthy. Workers carried water from the irrigation channels with genuine smiles on their faces, nobody slacking off, nobody needing a whip-wielding overseer. The barren wasteland had transformed into a thriving orchard full of fruit. He found me inside one of the sheds, taste-testing grape jam. I'd spent the whole day perfecting the sugar ratios for different fruit jams. When I offered him a spoonful of grape jam, his eyes went wide. He said it was incredible, sweet and sour and delicious. He asked how I'd grown an entire orchard so fast on land that was empty months ago. I told him I had my methods, but kept Linda's identity secret. If Father found out I had a plant mage who could accelerate growth, he'd definitely try to poach her. The man had already coveted Dragon's Howl. I handed over the crocodile magic core and collected my 15 gold coins. Business done. Brent immediately saw the commercial potential of fruit jam. He proposed a partnership. The Jordan family had trade routes across multiple cities, with knights to guard shipments and connections to handle tolls through other nobles' territories. He wanted a 70-30 split in the family's favor. I countered with 50-50. He said 40-60 was his final offer. I agreed instantly, but with 2 conditions. First, the Mott City market stayed exclusively mine. Second, every jar sold in other cities had to carry my name as a label. He thought the second condition was odd, but agreed since it didn't cost him anything. This was exactly what I wanted. Having the Jordan family distribute my jam across multiple cities meant reputation points flowing in from places I'd never even visited. Then a worker brought in the improved pear jam. I offered it to Brent. He insisted he never ate pears and would rather starve or jump in the lake than touch pear jam. 10 seconds later, he was eating it and mumbling that it was delicious. One more reputation point from my dear brother. Brent tried all 4 flavors of jam: apple, pear, grape, and orange, and couldn't stop eating even though he was already full. He was completely sold on our business partnership. I took him on a tour of the orchard. He was amazed at how healthy every tree looked. Lush leaves, full fruit, almost no bad apples or bird damage. He couldn't figure out how I'd managed it. I kept Linda's secret. Then at the irrigation channel, Brent froze. In the water below, a tiny crocodile about 20 centimeters long was sitting on the bottom, a perfect miniature iron-armored crocodile. Then another one swam over from the lake. I explained that there had been 2 crocodiles in the lake, a mated pair. The female had laid over a dozen eggs that had just hatched. My plan was to raise them, let them breed, and eventually turn this lake into a crocodile farm producing a steady supply of armored hides and magic cores. Brent was stunned by the ambition. Nobody dared farm second-rank magical beasts. But the economics were incredible. A single hide was worth 12 gold coins, a magic core 15, and the costs were practically zero since the crocodiles could feed themselves in the huge lake. When he tried to propose a business deal, I shut him down immediately. The crocodiles were strategic. I planned to use their hides to armor an elite knight squad and their magic cores for training, all to prepare for the war against the Edmund Society in a year. I was even feeding the babies my own blood to speed up their growth. Brent was disappointed, but asked me to give him first priority if I ever decided to sell any. I told him we'd see. I cut my palm and dripped blood into the channel. The baby crocodiles eagerly gobbled it up, and they seemed to grow slightly before our eyes. The mother crocodile surfaced in the lake nearby, watching from a distance. Brent finally understood why I dug the channels, keeping the workers safe from the mother while still accessing the water. After the tour, Brent left impressed. He said he'd discuss the jam sales plan with me next time I came to Mott City. Hope Town was transforming from a barren, hopeless territory into something with real potential, and even Brent could see it. After he left, I went back to perfecting the jam recipes. Through multiple rounds of testing and having workers taste test, I settled on 2 versions of each flavor, regular and a lightly sweetened variety. For fruits, 8 flavors total. My plan was to sell only 1 flavor per day, rotating through them. That way, people in Mott City would take much longer to get tired of any single taste, and I'd keep earning reputation for longer. Sales had dropped because a competitor, Baron Leverett, was running a promotion on his pineapple buns. Buy 1, get a free strawberry bun, plus 2 copper coins cash back. My servant George came back with this report. I wasn't worried about the competition itself. What bothered me was the timing. I was so close to reaching 2,000 reputation and breaking through to second-rank Magic Warrior. Anyone disrupting my business right now was going to regret it. I sat down and came up with something this world had never seen, a lottery. I cut paper into over 1,000 tickets, each with matching numbered pairs. I sprinkled magic-infused water on them as a counterfeit prevention measure. Then I set up a sign outside listing the prizes. 33rd place winners get a bowl of snow cake. 10 second-place winners get a jar of apple jam, and 1 grand prize winner gets half a pound of dragon meat. Someone asked if the dragon meat was real. I smiled and confirmed it was genuine. The crowd exploded. Dragon meat was something ordinary people never even dreamed of seeing. In the capital, it sold for 1 gold coin per pound. Half a pound was worth 50 silver, and more importantly, it could strengthen your body and boost a knight's battle aura. People swarmed the stall. I tore each ticket in half. 1 piece went into the box, the other to the buyer. News spread across Mott City at lightning speed. Everyone believed they'd be the lucky winner. The only requirement was buying a jam sandwich. Then you got a free ticket. Crowds poured in from every direction. Meanwhile, Baron Leverett watched his shop empty out in under 30 seconds as all his customers rushed to my stall. He was furious. His brother came running in with a ticket and explained the lottery system. Leverett immediately hatched a scheme. Forge identical tickets with copied handwriting, make multiple sets, and no matter what number won the grand prize, they'd have matching tickets to claim the dragon meat. Either I'd run out of dragon meat and lose face, or I'd have to hand over several pounds at a loss. He thought he was clever, but he didn't know about my anti-counterfeit magic water. Over in the crowd, Duel and Manda spotted the commotion. Duel muttered that I'd caused another citywide sensation. Manda wondered where I got dragon meat. Duel pointed out that if I had a dragon fang sword and dragon scale armor, half a pound of meat was nothing. They tried to get tickets, but it was too late. With this many people flooding in, the sandwiches would sell out instantly. By the time they arrived at my shop, the street was packed with over 10,000 people, with more still coming.